Hello? Are we on? Is it live streaming? Hold on a minute. Hello? Just give me a second. And yes, we are on. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another live stream. This is our third live stream in the last week, and today it's free agent frenzy. We have a ton of very interesting news. I'm going to touch on some of the things that happened last night, and we're going to have a ton of things happen today, even though the free agent crop is now being dwindled down and down as more and more players sign extensions. So we'll touch on all of that over the next couple of hours, as I'll be with you guys until between 11:30 and 12:30 Mountain Time. But hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in. So I appreciate all of you guys' support. Thanks for joining the streams if you haven't already. Thanks for the support on draft day and on the second day of the draft. Thanks for all of your support there. So today we're going to have a lot of very interesting things. In about half an hour, free agency will officially open. It'll be very interesting to see who winds up getting signed. There are still a couple of really solid players who are on the free agent board, but not a whole bunch anymore because we saw a ton of massive signings last night. So before I touch on all the stuff that happened over the past little while, I do want to touch on the fact that in these corners here we have our top 10 UFAs and our top 10 trade players. So on the UFA side, you have the top player I have currently being Ehlers. Second is Boeser. Third is Granlund. Fourth is Vladislav Gavrikov. And fifth is Jake Allen. Sixth is Jonathan Drouin. Seven is Andrew Mangiapane. 8 is Pius Suter, 9 is Pontus Holmberg, and 10 is Perbix. Those are, in my opinion, the top 10 UFAs going into today. And on top of that, we've got the top 10 players on my end-to-end hockey trade bait list, involving Jason Robertson, Jordan Kyrou, Marco Rossi, as well as Byram, Rasmus Andersson. You've got Keandre Miller. You've got Nick Hague, who was Chihuahua dealt to the Nashville Predators. You have Brian Rust. You have JG Pajot, and you have Martin Necas. So those are the top 10 at this point in time for the trade bait list. So very interesting out there. Now last night we saw one heck of a busy slew of moves yesterday. So I do want to touch on all of these things that happened last night. So bear with me for a second here. The live stream started now. Thank you all for tuning in. If you haven't already, like the video, subscribe down below. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, so it really does help out the channel. So we did see a whole bunch of signings. I'm going to touch on these in videos that I took last night but was not able to post, so we're going to touch on all of these later on. But in today's video, we're going to also touch on some of these things too. Just give me a second here while I try and get this stuff going. Hold on a minute here. Let's see if I can get this going. Just give me one moment here. So very interesting stuff happened yesterday. And once again, I already did one video about it. There's a couple more that are coming out later today. But yesterday, we saw first Henri Jokiharju signed a 3x3 deal with the Boston Bruins. There was some talk about him re-signing with the Bruins, and he did indeed do that. Beecher gets a 1-year $900,000 AAV deal. That was a very interesting signing from yesterday. Michael DiPietro got a 2-year deal with AAV of $813,000, so that was a pretty good deal. Then you saw Kasperi Kapanen sign a 1-year deal with an AAV of $1.3 million, which was a pretty good deal there for the Oilers. Noah Phillip got a 1-year contract with an AAV of $775,000. Sam Malinsky in Colorado got a 1-year $1.4 million AAV deal. Then you had Sasson, who had a 1-year $775,000 AAV deal. Anya Buick, who had a 2-year $775,000 deal in Utah. Romanov got a very big extension, 8 seasons at a $6.25 million AAV, which is very interesting there. You also had Archdeep Baines, who had 2 years at $775,000 AAV. So that was very interesting note there. Atu Ratu got a 1-year contract extension, no, a 2-year contract extension from Vancouver with an AAV of $775,000. Guillaume Brisebois got a 1-year $775,000 deal in the Canucks organization. Albert Johansson had a 2-year extension with an AAV of $1.13 million to remain in Detroit. Aaron Ekblad, probably one of the bigger signings yesterday, wound up getting a 8-year extension in Florida Florida with an AAV of $6.1 million. What a beautiful signing that was for Florida Panthers to get Ekblad under contract. Then we also saw, hold on a minute here, guys, as this just loads. Sportsnet, they're just talking to all of the reporters for the Canadian teams. So we shall see about all that stuff. Hold on a minute here. Some more signings from last night. Gregory Merkulov in Boston signed a 1-year, $775,000 deal. Mark McLaughlin in Jersey signed a 1-year, $775,000 deal. The Boston Bruins, the Florida Panthers signed Brad Marchand to a 6-year extension with an AAV of $5.25 million. That's an incredible thing there for the Florida Panthers as Marchand wound up getting signed. Then the Ottawa Senators signed Nick Cousins to a 1-year extension with an AAV of $825,000. Trent Miner in Colorado and Clark Bishop in Calgary both got 1-year deals with an AAV of $775,000. A little bit of a surprising one here as the Jackets signed Ivan Provorov to a 7-year extension with an AAV of $8.5 million. That was a massive extension there for the Jackets last night. Steven Laurence got a 3-year extension with an AAV of $1.35 million yesterday. Solid bomb, 6 guys, should be a solid sign there for the Leafs. Andrei Kuzmenko got a 1-year extension with an AAV of $4.3 million, which wasn't an overly bad sign there for the Kings. Mitch Marner signed an 8-year extension with a $12 million AAV in Toronto, and then we'll talk about that trade in a second. Levi Merilainen got a 1-year extension with an AAV of $1.05 million to remain Ottawa's backup. Bergeron got a 1-year extension with an AAV of $1.83 million to continue to work in the Red Wings middle 6. Evan Bouchard got a 4-year extension with an AAV of $10.5 million to remain in the Edmonton Oilers organization. So that was very interesting to note there. Declan Chisholm got a 2-year extension with an AAV of $1.6 million after the Capitals acquired him on draft day. And then we also saw Patrick Kane sign a 1-year extension in the Detroit Red Wings organization with an AAV of $3 million. So those were all of the signings from yesterday. Lots of very, very intriguing ones. Caden Primo was then dealt by the Montreal Canadiens to Carolina for a 2026 7th-round pick. The Detroit Red Wings dealt Vladimir Tarasenko to Minnesota for future considerations. The Utah Mammoth dealt Matias Maccelli to Toronto for a conditional 2027 3rd-round pick that could turn into a 2029 second if Maccelli winds up hitting 51 points and the Leafs make the playoffs next year. And the Vegas Golden Knights and Toronto Maple Leafs made a very interesting swap. The Knights trade Nicholas Waugh to the Toronto Maple Leafs in exchange for this Mitch Marner contract, which they just signed 8 times 12. So they do a sign and trade. Waugh goes to Toronto. Marner goes to Vegas. A huge piece of the Vegas Golden Knights puzzle is taken as they are able to get Marner. And on top of that, there was a lot of announcements last night that Alex Pietrangelo is probably going to call it a career, or at least it sounds like it. It sounds like he's going to retire after the duration of his contract. He'll probably go on long-term injury reserve at this point, but it seems like with his contract going on long-term injury reserve, the Knights are going to have the space they need to wind up making some very interesting movement for Pietrangelo. So very interesting note there, but those were all the movements we saw from over the past little while. Earlier today, just before I started recording this video, we did see some more interesting movement. First, Martin Ferrovaria, Washington Capitals player who's a solid second pair defenseman, really solid guy. He winds up getting a 7-year extension with the AV of $6 million. He was an RFA, so he needed a new contract, and that's a massive one. I thought Ferrara would probably get around the $3 to $4 million mark, so the Caps obviously view him really good if they're going to give him 7 by 6. So an interesting note there. Tomasz Nosek has signed a 1-year league minimum deal, $775,000, to remain with the Florida Panthers, so that's a very interesting sign there for Florida. Then we saw the Vancouver Canucks sign 2 contract extensions for next season, and that's Connor Garland and Thatcher Demko. Garland gets a 6x6 contract, a 6-year extension with an AV of $6 million to remain in the middle 6 for the Vancouver Canucks, while the Canucks also signed Thatcher Demko to a 3-year extension with an AV of $8.5 million. So a very interesting note there. Like I said, I didn't want the Canucks to sign Demko because I didn't think it was the right move there for the Canucks. So 3 years, $8.5 million, at least it's not a long-term deal. If he's not doing overly well, I could potentially see him wind up getting dealt. He is a solid starter if he's healthy, but he has problems staying healthy. So very interesting note there, but I do think that's an interesting signing as Demko winds up signing for another 3 years. Well, for Garland, solid middle six guy, 6x6, not an overly terrible deal for the Vancouver Canucks. And I do think long term, Garland could be a very solid guy there for the Vancouver Canucks. So a very interesting couple of extensions there as Demko gets 3 years in Vancouver and Garland gets 6. Then we saw Tony DeAngelo, who had a really solid stint with the Islanders in the second half of the season last year, signed a 1-year extension with an AAV of $1.75 million to remain as the team's third pair defenseman, which is a solid pickup there for the New York Islanders. Joel Hanley, who was a guy, 7th-8 type of defenseman in the Calgary Flames organization, signed a 2-year extension with an AAV of $1,075,000. So a very interesting sign there. It's a little bit of an overpayment in my opinion for a guy like Hanley, but Hanley will be staying in the Calgary Flames organization for the next 2 seasons. After that, hold on a minute here, guys. We saw the Florida Panthers sign their backup. They acquired Daniil Tarasov just about a week ago from the Columbus Blue Jackets to be their new backup. They have signed him to a 1-year extension with an AAV of $1.05 million. Not a bad deal there for the Florida Panthers. They are able to get Tarasov on a pretty dang good deal. And then we also saw the Carolina Hurricanes extend Logan Stankoven once again. Just like the Canucks players, it's not something for this year, it's something for the future. Stankoven gets that 8-year extension with an AAV of $6 million in the Hurricanes organization. A beautiful move there from the Carolina Hurricanes to sign Logan Stankoven. And then just before I started this live stream, we saw the New Jersey Devils, which was number 5 on my UFA list, sign Jake Allen. Allen gets a 5-year extension from the Devils with an AAV of $1.8 million. A beautiful sign there from the Devils, as they're going to be able to keep Allen as the team's backup for the foreseeable future at under $2 million. No, that will take him until he's 39 years old, but I do think that keeping his AAV under $2 million, that's a pretty good pickup here for the New Jersey Devils. So very interesting note there. But Allen has signed in Jersey. We also saw Hanley sign in Calgary, DeAngelo in NYI. We saw Ferravari sign in Washington, Nosek in Florida, Tarasov in Florida, and then Garland, Demko, and Stankoven have all been given extensions for next season. So very interesting note there. So we're going to look over and see what some of the things are happening right now. Okay, apparently we're seeing a trade according to Chris Johnston. The Montreal Canadiens are acquiring Zachary Bolduc from the St. Louis Blues for Logan Mailloux. Very interesting note there. I don't know why St. Louis still needs more defensemen. It's a very interesting deal. For the Habs, it makes total sense. They need some more help in the forward group. They have an abundance and probably too many defensive players. So they trade from a position of strength to a position of weakness. And I think Bolduc this upcoming season should be a solid top 9 forward there for the Montreal Canadiens. For the Blues, a little more confusing. I think Mailloux in a couple of years' time could be a solid third, maybe second pair defenseman, but I don't think he's going to be anything this year. So a very interesting note there. But Bolduc has been acquired by the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for Logan Mailloux. So very interesting note there. There's also been some talk about Robertson deal to Boston. Robertson was, I think, in my end-to-end hockey trade bait list. I think it was in the 20s somewhere in my new updated end-to-end hockey trade bait list. So it definitely seems like he will wind up getting dealt. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But it does sound like Vic Robertson is getting dealt. Yes, he has. The official deal. Victor Robertson has been dealt to the Boston Bruins in exchange for a 2027 5th-round pick. I'm still at a loss as to why teams are helping out Edmonton clear cap space. It's a very interesting deal. The Oilers get a 5th-round pick back in return. Not a bad deal for them. They clear off cap space, which is something that team desperately needed to do. So very interesting note there. But the Edmonton Oilers have just freed up about $4 million in cap space by moving Vic Arvidsson. And then, like we said, Habs have acquired Bolduc from the St. Louis Blues for Logan Mailloux. So very interesting note there. Going to be very interesting to see what else happens today. As we said, there are still 9 of the 10 players on the end-to-end hockey UFA list on the board still. Nikolai Ehlers, that's the name I'm going to be really wanting to watch out for when free agency hits. I think Carolina's been linked to him heavily. Anaheim could be a landing spot. Utah could be a landing spot. There's a lot of interesting spots he could go. Boeser, probably one of the better players on the free agent market now. I think he could go a lot of places. Mikael Granlund's another one. Gavrikov, it sounds like will probably wind up in New York. So we'll have to wait and see on that. And then you got some lower-end guys. Drouin, Mangiapane, P.S. Suter, Holmberg, who wasn't qualified by the Leafs. You got Nick Perbix, who's a solid young up-and-coming defenseman. So there's definitely a couple of very interesting UFAs. But I mean, when I was trying to compile the UFA list for today, I had a top 10 that was cut in pieces because Marchand signed and then Ekblad signed, as well as Marner got signed and traded, and then on top of that Ekblad signed, and on top of that Kuzmenko signed, and then it was like all of the players who were in my top 10 just completely got wiped off the board. So this is my new top 10, and as you can see, it's probably one of the weaker UFA crops we've seen in quite some time because the like 7, 8, 9, 10 are all like middle 6 players to like third pair defensemen. So like there's not a whole bunch of elite level talent besides maybe guys like Ehlers and Boeser. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there, but it's a very interesting deal right now that sees a lot of these interesting players. And if you look at the trade side, there could be a couple of interesting names out there. Jason Robertson, he's now eligible in about half an hour, 50 minutes actually, to sign an extension. So if it sounds like they're not going to come to terms on an extension, I could see him get dealt. Kyrou, his no trade clause has now kicked in, so it's probably a lot less likely that Kyrou will get moved, but I definitely think it's still a possibility. Marco Rossi's an RFA, doesn't really want to sign in the Wild organization. Byram's an RFA. It seems like him and the Sabres really can't come to terms on an extension, so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw one of those two guys get moved. Rasmus Andersson's a pending UFA, really solid guy. The Calgary Flames really want to move him. It sounds like he wants to sign an extension in Vegas. It sounds like that's really the only place he'll be open to doing a sign and trade and extend somewhere else. Otherwise, he'd just be for some other teams, like as a rental, and it wouldn't be as a good of a return for the Calgary Flames. So we'll have to wait and see on that. I could definitely see Andersson get dealt, and maybe the Flames do wind up doing that, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Keandre Miller in the New York Rangers organization, another RFA, another guy who I think could definitely wind up getting dealt. Nick Hague's already been dealt. He was dealt to Nashville just a little while ago. You also have Brian Rust. The Penguins apparently could be moving a couple of players today. Rust, I think, is definitely a very likely chance to get moved, with the Penguins trying to go through some sort of a retool, rebuild type thing. JG Pageau, he's got 1 year left, $5 million AAV, very solid player, so I definitely do think he's a very likely chance to get moved with the lack of centers on this free agent core. And then Martin Necas, just like Robertson, he's going to be eligible to sign an extension in about 15 minutes, and if he doesn't really want to sign an extension, I could definitely see him get moved, so we shall wait and see on that. But those are our top 10 players on the end-to-end hockey trade bait list as it sits right now. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Where do you think the top free agents go? Where do you think all of this plays out? Who do you think winds up getting dealt today? Could we see an offer sheet or two? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the chat below. What's your opinion on all of this? I'm going to try and keep you guys up to date as best as I can. And once again, with the weak free agent core, I might only stay with you guys until 11:30. I might stay with you guys closer until 12:30. I do have some things to do with family later on today, so I'm not going to do a whole bunch of videos later on today. I'm just going to probably try and catch up on the ones that happened yesterday, on top of maybe doing 1 to 2 videos for today. So we shall see how that all goes. We're just waiting to see if there's any updates right now. So Bolduc, if you're just joining us, Bolduc has been dealt to the Montreal Canadiens for Logan Mailloux. Very interesting swap there. Mailloux is probably going to be a solid player in the Blues defensive organization, while I do think Bolduc's going to be a solid top 9 addition there for the Montreal Canadiens. So very interesting note there. There's been another trade. The Buffalo Sabres have acquired a 6th round pick in the 2026 draft from the Chicago Blackhawks for Sam Lafferty. So Sam Lafferty is heading back to the Chicago Blackhawks organization. I think he's got 1 year left, and that's free up, I think, just around $2 or $1.5 million in cap space for the Buffalo Sabres, and I guess some 6th round pick. So very interesting trade there. We've seen 3 small swaps, as Robertson's gone to Boston for a 2027 5th, Lafferty's gone to Chicago for a 2026 6th, and Mailloux's been swapped for Bolduc and the Habs and the Red Wings organization. So very and the Habs and the Blues organization. So very interesting to note there. Chris Johnson just was tweeting out the offer sheet compensation for anyone who wants to know. So if a player sends an offer sheet below $1.5 million, there's no compensation. Between $1.5 and $2.3 million, it's a third round pick. Between $2.3 and $4.6 million, it's a second round pick. Between $4.6 and $7 million, it's a first and a third round pick. Between $7 million and $9.36 million is a first, a second, and a third round pick. Between $9.36 and $11.7, it's two first rounders, a second and a third, and over $11.7 million will be the next 4 seasons of first round picks. So very interesting to note there. We'll have to wait and see how exactly all of that happens, but very interesting note there. So if you look at the trades that happened so far, I think that the Oilers win the Robertson deal because they're able to free up cap space. I think that the Hawks win the Lafferty deal because I do think Lafferty was a pretty solid player in the Chicago Blackhawks organization. And I do think that the Habs won the Bolduc-Mailloux swap because I do think Bolduc is going to be a very solid piece in the Montreal Canadiens core. So very interesting note there, but Bolduc has indeed signed there. So very interesting note there. Elliot Friedman's mentioning that Adam Gaudette is going to be heading to free agency. So very interesting note there. As we talked about earlier, Demko winds up doing very interesting note there. Once again, Demko's only a 3-year deal, so it's not that bad of a contract. But very interesting note there that Demko has been extended by the Canucks. We are now 11 minutes away from the start of free agency, so we shall see how the start of free agency winds up shaping up. We definitely got a lot of very intriguing things that are going to be happening over the course of the day. Let's see. The Bolts apparently, which are a team I did not wind up mentioning in the qualifying offer video I'm going to talk about later today, which I took yesterday. The Bolts did not qualify Gage Goncalves, Jaden Drury, or Ryder Korczak. It's not too surprising there. Those are some lower end guys who I don't think would have wound up being signed. So very interesting note there. Apparently, according to Pierre LeBrun, the Habs and Blues had talked about a larger deal instead of just the Bolduc-Mailloux swap involving Jordan Kyrou, and that didn't come to pass. Now Kyrou's no movement clause kicked in, so the Habs were trying to get even more better involving Jordan Kyrou, but apparently a deal never came to fruition. So very interesting note there. Lots of very interesting updates here. Like I said, Bolduc's going to be a solid pickup here for the Habs. Mailloux, I think, in time could be a solid pickup there for the Blues, but apparently it sounded like they did have some very, very interesting updates when it comes to potentially a huge deal involving Jordan Kyrou, but now with Kyrou's no movement clause kicked in, that sort of deal has fallen through, so very interesting note there, but Kyrou is probably going to stay in St. Louis now, but it's still a very interesting trade between the Habs and the Blues involving Bolduc and Mailloux. So very interesting note there. We still got a lot of very interesting things to talk about. Lots of very interesting things. Like, what is your guys' thoughts on all the things that have happened so far? Are you surprised that Marner is in Vegas? Are you surprised that the Panthers were able to keep all 3 of their big UFAs? Are you surprised that the Seattle Kraken still have to do some things? Do you think Utah does some things earlier today? Anaheim does some things. Does Toronto? Does Tampa? Like, who do you think will be the biggest players today over the next couple of hours and potentially on later into the day? So I would love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the chat below if you can. Love to hear your guys' thoughts. We're still waiting on some of these updates here, seeing what exactly is going to happen. It's now 9 minutes away from the start of free agency, so very interesting out there. Apparently, according to a person on Twitter, the Bruins now have $7 million left in cap space. So it sounds like they're probably going to be all in the Ehlers or Boeser sweepstakes. I think Boston, I know they've made some interesting moves, but I think there's a very likely chance they're going to take a step back next year. They were already one of the lower teams in the Eastern Conference this year, and that was with guys like Marchand still on the team and Carlos still on the team. So I think there's a very likely chance the Bruins take a pretty big step back next year, or one of the lower teams in the Eastern Conference next year. So we shall see on that. Just updates, the Bolduc trade, the Robertson trade. Very interesting note there. So I don't know what some of these teams are going to do. If we go back to here, let's see how much cap space some of these teams currently have going forward right now. So just give me a second here while I pull up some of the numbers on each team's cap. So hold on a minute here, guys. Just give me a second. Let's see. Okay, so the Golden Knights are currently $6.81 million over the cap, but that isn't including Pietrangelo, who could be placed on long-term injury reserve. The Habs are $3.38 million over the cap. That's not including Price, who could also be placed on long-term injury reserve. The Panthers are $2.18 million over the cap. So I do wonder if Vegas, Montreal, Florida maybe trade off a piece to try and free up some cap space. Stars have $900,000 in cap space. The Blues have $1.61 million. The Oilers have $4.55 million. The Bolts have $5.48 million. There's a couple of other teams. The bigger teams are the most cap space. San Jose has $44 million in cap space with only a couple of RFAs to sign. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they handle this. Anaheim has $35 million in cap space. So I do wonder if they take a couple of runs at some players. Carolina has $26 million. Winnipeg has $23 million. Buffalo has $22 million. Columbus has $20 million, as does the Chicago Blackhawks. The Flames have $19 million. LA has $19 million. Pittsburgh has $19 million. And Seattle and Utah have $18 million in cap space. So I think those are the teams you'd be looking at to make some sort of a big splash today. They're looking at Seattle, Utah, Los Angeles, Columbus, Winnipeg, Anaheim, and just because of the abundance of cap space that they have, maybe San Jose as teams who could potentially be making some big, interesting updates here today. So very interesting note there. Like we said, we saw 3 trades earlier today. Vic Arvidsson is now a member of the Boston Bruins. Logan Mailloux has been dealt to St. Louis for Zachary Bolduc, and Sam Lafferty is joining the Chicago Blackhawks yet again. So very interesting note there. And like we said, we've seen a whole bunch of signings. Thatcher Demko in Vancouver, Connor Garland in Vancouver, Logan Stankoven in Carolina have all been extended. You also saw Jake Allen sign back in New Jersey, Ferravari signed back in Washington, Taze, like we talked about earlier, is back in Winnipeg, Hanley in Calgary, Taraslava Nosek back in Florida, Ryan Johnson has also signed an extension in Buffalo. Ryan Johnson just signed a 3-year extension with AV of $775,000, so some added defensive depth there. For the Buffalo Sabres, we are nearing free agency. We're about just under 5 minutes away from the start of free agency, and like I said, I'll be with you guys here until about 11:30 or 12:30, depending on how free agency starts going. And like I said, I do have some things to do later today, so might not get a whole bunch of videos out after this live stream, but I'll definitely try and get at least a couple of them. Like I said, I got 3 videos that I did earlier, so we shall see exactly how those ones go. I'll try and post those ones first, and then I'll see if I can get any sort of videos on today posted, so we'll see about that. Just going to update here, see if anything's been happening. Like I said, I love being a fan of the Vegas Golden Knights. I know that some people might be upset about that, but the Golden Knights each and every year make some of the biggest moves in the NHL. This year was Marner, before they've been able to acquire Stone, Eichel, Pietrangelo, Hanifin, Hurdle. Like most of the team in the Vegas Golden Knights organization has been acquired via either trade or free agency. Like it's extremely exciting to be a Vegas Golden Knights fan. And I think the Knights have improved enough to maybe be one of the better Pacific Division teams in the NHL. They round out their bottom 6, they maybe get some more defensive help, and I definitely think this Golden Knights team is going to be contending for another Stanley Cup final next year. And same thing with Florida. Like I know I'm still sticking with my guts that the Florida Panthers will be eliminated round 1 next year, because I just think that that's exactly what's going to happen, even though they're bringing back all of their pieces. But I mean, look at what they were able to do. Marchand, 6 years at $5.25 million, which the AAV is a steal, but that's going to take him until he's 43 years old. So that's a massive extension. You got Ekblad, who's only going to be making $6.1 million for the next couple of seasons. And they signed Bennett to an 8x8 contract. Like, all these moves have been very, very good for the Florida Panthers. And don't tell me it's about no tax state. These guys want to take discounts to win with their team. So very interesting to note there. Like, Florida's going to be a really lethal powerhouse. So like I said, with Florida doing well, with Vegas doing well, I do wonder what some of these other teams do. Like, Toronto just lost a 100-point player. I know they acquired Waugh. I know they acquired Michelli, but I do wonder if they may try and make some more additions to try and replace Marner. On top of that, I do wonder about some of these other teams. Like, does Dallas make some very interesting moves today? Do the Colorado Avalanche? Do the Wild? Does Utah, who's already trying to get a little bit better? Who else winds up getting better today? It's going to be very interesting note there. As you guys can see over here, Boeser and Ehlers are the top 2 players on the UFA list and the end-to-end hockey trade bait list. On the UFA list, you have Granlund, you also have Gavrikov. Allen has actually signed an extension in New Jersey. Then you also have Drouin, you have Mangiapane, you have Suter, you have Holmberg, and you have Perbix. Lots of very intriguing players here on the UFA list for the free agency. So we shall see there in commercial break. We are 2 minutes away from the start of free agency. So very interesting note there. I don't know exactly what the Boston Bruins are going to be doing here. So we shall see exactly what happens. Let's see. No updates here. I still think Gavrikov is probably going to go to the New York Rangers. It just seems like with all the talk we've seen from the past while, I'm starting to get that feeling. On top of that, we've got some more things like we said before. Pierre LeBrun mentioned that the Montreal Canadiens and St. Louis Blues mentioned a Jordan Kyrou trade, but that never wound up coming to fruition. So very interesting note there. They're just announcing the Bolduc thing on the Sportsnet stream. So very interesting deal there. Like personally, I do think the Habs win that deal. I do think at this point in time, Bolduc is a better player than Logan Mailloux, and I do think eventually, even if Mailloux winds up rounding out into a solid third, second pair of defensemen, I do think the better player in that deal is Zachary Bolduc, and I do think he should be able to work out well in the middle six for the Habs. So a very solid pickup here for Montreal as they are able to get a very solid player here in Bolduc. So it'll be very interesting to see how everything winds up happening today. We are 1 minute away from the start of free agency. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Who do you think winds up going places today? Could we see some trades, offer sheets? Where do the top UFAs go? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the chat below. Love to hear your guys' opinion. We're still waiting some more updates. Probably going to take a couple of minutes for things to wind up happening, but definitely seems like we could see some very interesting things today. Apparently, according to Pierre LeBrun, the LA Kings were the team who was the most hurt by the Mitch Marner sign-in trade, because apparently they did have a meeting scheduled with Marner, and they did really want to try and woo him to try and get him into Los Angeles, and now that obviously can't happen because he's in Vegas. So I do wonder what the Los Angeles Kings are going to do today. Ehlers, Boeser, I do think they'll try and take a run at someone. They've been linked to Raquel and Rust in Pittsburgh. I do wonder about that too. So we shall see exactly what happens here, but definitely there's going to be a lot of very interesting moves, even though it's not going to be one of the strongest UFA classes out there over the past couple of seasons. I do think it's going to be quite a nice signing period here, and definitely a solid stream. So we're half an hour in. We just hit the free agent mark. So the free agency is now officially opened. It is 9 a.m. Mountain Time. Oh, it's 10 a.m. Mountain Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Free agency is now opened. Teams can sign with... Other players can sign with whatever teams they want to. So very interesting note there, as free agency is now open, and we shall wait and see what sort of moves are going to be happening here. So let's see, is there anything other updates? Apparently Mitch Marner is going to wear number 93 in Vegas, which is very, very interesting to note there, which I think was one of his junior numbers. So very interesting to note there. Free agency is now underway. So let us see what other big and exciting things has happened. So let's see. We're still waiting on some of these very interesting moves that are going to be happening later today. Earlier today, we saw a lot of interesting ones. 3 massive contract extensions, including Garland, a 6x6 deal in Vancouver, Demko, a $3 million deal in Vancouver, and Stankoven, a 6x8 deal, $6 million for 8 seasons in the Hurricanes organization. So lots of very, very intriguing stuff there at this current point in time. So we shall see exactly what else happens. They're talking to the Winnipeg Jets insider right now, so we shall see what happens. Just trying to refresh the screen, see if there's anything big happening according to some of the insiders. Like I said, offer sheets are a possibility today. I definitely think we could see some very interesting offer sheets with some of the pending RFAs, and some of those guys who are on the trade bait list, like Miller, Rossi, and Byram. I do wonder if they're a possibility to get dealt today, to get offer sheet today too. So we shall see about that. We have a lot of very interesting note there. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Leave a like, leave a chat. Love to hear your guys' opinion on what has happened so far and all the things that could be happening later today. So now with free agency back, we're going to be seeing some very interesting stuff here. Pierre LeBrun mentions that Mikael Granlund is going to market today, so he's not going to be brought back by Dallas. It is a bad loss there for Dallas, given how well he played, but very interesting note there. Rick Dollywell's reporting Noah Juulsen's going to head to the Philadelphia Flyers organization. We shall see if that's an official thing, but it definitely seems like Noah Juulsen will be playing for a new team next year, so very interesting note there. According to Elliot Friedman, Adam Gaudette is going to probably head to market. So Gaudette had a very fantastic season over in Ottawa this past year, so seeing him go to market will be very interesting. I do wonder if he'll be able to get a solid deal in free agency, which I think he would because he almost had a 20-goal season. So very interesting note there. So it definitely sounds like Noah Juulsen is going to Philadelphia. According to Frank Saravalli, he does wonder what San Jose will do. They have a whole bunch of cap space, and apparently Jan Rutta is going to market. So according to Frank Saravalli, the top right shot defensemen on the free agent market right now are Perbix, Rutta, Ceci, Schmidt, and Klingberg. Like, that ain't a really good right shot defenseman. Schmidt can be maybe a second pair defenseman, but he's probably more suited to be a third pair. Ceci's suited to be a third pair right shot defenseman. Ruta's definitely like a 6th, 7th defenseman, and Klingberg's like a decent third pair defenseman. So like, there are no top 4 right shot defensemen available in free agency at this point in time. Like, there just aren't. Perbix might be the only guy, because of his age and things like that, who could potentially be a top 4 right shot defenseman. But besides that, like, there are no top 4 right shot defensemen. So for teams who need right shot defensemen, you're probably going to see them go to the trade markets. I mean, Byram's a lefty, Miller's a lefty, so I don't think either of those two. But Rasmus Andersson, I think, is going to be a very interesting name to watch out for, because I do think there will be a ton of teams, potentially even as a rental, who might overpay with the lack of right shot defensemen on the free agent market for Rasmus Andersson. So we shall wait and see on that. We're still waiting for some of these updates here, so we shall see what else happens. It does sound like Noah Juulsen is going to the Philadelphia Flyers organization, so very interesting note there. According to David Pagnoa, the Penguins do remain open to moving out veterans via trade. So we're looking at Rust, we're looking at Raquel, and we're looking at Erik Karlsson. And some teams are expected to circle back to Pittsburgh, according to Pagnoa, if they lose out on their UFA targets. So my guess is teams lose out on Ehlers, teams lose out on Boeser, and teams lose out on Granlund, and those 3 top-end, top 6 guys all wind up signing with the team, and there are a couple of teams out there who didn't get them. Those teams could wind up going after Rust or Raquel next. So we shall wait and see on that, but apparently Pittsburgh Penguins could try and move some of their top-end veteran talent off, and it also seems like they are open to trying to fill out some of the depth pieces in their roster by making some interesting moves and signing some lower-end UFAs. So we shall wait and see on that. Will be very interesting note there. They're just talking about Nikolai Ehlers on the Sportsnet stream, so very interesting note there. Trying to figure out all of the things that are happening. Love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the chat below on what do you think about the moves that happened yesterday. What do you think about the moves that could happen today? What UFAs could wind up being signed? What do you think sort of UFAs could wind up being extended? And what sort of trades do you think we could see today? And do we see any offer sheets? Love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the chat below. What is your opinion on what's going to happen today? And what's your opinion on any of the moves that have happened today? So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Once again, it sounds like D'Angelo signed in the New York Islanders organization. Allen signed in New Jersey. Garland, Demko, and Stankoven have all been given extensions with the Vancouver Canucks and Carolina Hurricanes. Just going to hold on here. Let's see if there's been any updates when it comes to some of these signings. We saw 3 trades earlier today. Vic Robertson is now a member of the Boston Bruins, dealt to Boston for a 5th-round pick. Sam Lafferty is now a member of the Chicago Blackhawks, dealt to Chicago for a 6th-round pick. And Logan Mailloux is now a member of the St. Louis Blues, who was swapped for Zachary Bolduc. So very interesting note there. According to, we've got a couple of very interesting signings here. So the first 2 UFA signings have been made. Matt Luff, who I think was the depth player in the Florida organization, who was with Los Angeles for the longest period of time, signed a 1-year league minimum deal with the St. Louis Blues. So the Blues get a little bit more extra forward power, gets a little bit extra firepower in the form of depth player Matt Luff. So very interesting note there. Could be a solid depth add there for the Blues. Well, Noah Juulsen, who spent a lot of time in Vancouver the past couple of seasons, worked well with Rick Tocchet, has joined Rick Tocchet again, but now in Philadelphia. As the Philadelphia Flyers have signed a 1-year extension for Juulsen with the AAV of $900,000. So the Flyers are able to get some sort of defensive help with a bigger body type guy like Noah Juulsen, and 1 year, $900,000. That's not a bad contract contract for a guy who can play 6-7 minutes on the blue line. So very interesting note there, but Noah Juulsen has signed a 1-year, $900,000 extension with the Philadelphia Flyers. So very interesting note there. We are waiting to see if there's been any more updates as of this right now. Let's see. Yeah, we know goalie Jake Allen is back with the New Jersey Devils. A really good stuff there for the New Jersey Devils. Like 5 years, $1.8 million AAV for Allen to back up Markstrom at least for next year and continue to be a solid goaltender there for the Devils. Like really solid deal. There were some reports out there that Allen could get $5+ million on an AAV on a new deal. It would have probably only been like a 2 to 3 year deal, but still, Allen getting signed for 5 years, taking him to 39 years old, is incredible there for the Devils. So once again, if it was a little more AAV, I would have said this was a bad deal for the Devils, but because they were able to keep Allen under $2 million, I think that was a really solid move there for the Devils. So very interesting note there. When it comes to Connor Garland, a 6x6 extension starting next year. Very beautiful move there from the Canucks. I do think that the middle six winger has the potential to be a really solid player there in the Canucks organization for a long period of time. And I do really think that Garland has the makings of a really solid middle six forward. So I think he only got a bump of like, $1.5 million from his previous deal. And given how well Garland played, I mean, he was a top 3 point player this past season in the Canucks organization. So I do think Garland getting 6x6 isn't a bad deal there for the Canucks. I do think could wind up aging quite well. So very interesting note there, but Garland has also extended. So very interesting note there. We're looking for some more of the interesting updates when it comes to free agency. Just going to talk about a couple of things that happened yesterday. So some of the bigger UFAs that were out there were signed last night. Ivan Provorov signed an 8-year extension with an AAV of $9.5 million in the Blue Jackets organization. Very interesting note there. Provorov is a very solid player. Is he an $8.5 million defenseman? I don't think so. And for 7 seasons, like that's a gamble and a half there for the Jackets. They do have the cap space to pay him. However, I do think that's a little bit of a gamble I would have not paid. So very interesting note there. But Provorov has signed a long-term extension in Jackets. Brad Marchand signed a 6-year, $5.25 million AAV deal, and Aaron Ekblad signed a 6-year or 8-year, $6.1 million AAV deal to remain in the Florida Panthers organization. So quite surprising that the Florida Panthers were able to sign all 3 of their big penny UFAs in Ekblad, Marchand, as well as Bennett to new extensions. So very interesting note there, where that Florida team is looking poised to go to a 3-peat. So very interesting note there. They're just talking about some of the bigger UFAs on the Sportsnet stream right now. Just give me a couple seconds here while I try and break you some of the big news that happens earlier today. Let's see. According to Elliot Friedman, Christian Dvorak is signing a 1-year, $4.5 million AAV deal in the Philadelphia Flyers organization. So Philadelphia is active early. Dvorak, I think, was on my UFA list on one of the lower sides. So very interesting note there. A solid deal there for the Flyers. Like $4.5 million. It's a little bit of a pricey extension there, but it's a 1-year deal. So the Flyers have cap space to play with. They needed some center help. So like that's a solid deal in my opinion for Philadelphia. If it doesn't work out, they can walk away from him next year. So very interesting note there, but it doesn't sound like Christian Dvorak is signing a 1-year, $4.5 million AAV with the Philadelphia Flyers. So very interesting note there, but Dvorak is very interesting. Apparently, according to Frank Seravalli, the Avalanche have been engaging to keep defenseman Ryan Lindgren since clearing out cap space, which is the Cuylle contract, but it does sound like Lindgren will be heading to market. So Lindgren is actually another top-end right-shot defenseman. He can play on the right side. He's a really solid rough and tumble guy. I don't think he'll get a long-term deal, but I definitely think there are teams with the low amount of right-shot defensemen that would pay him some big bucks. So very interesting note there, but the Colorado Avalanche, it sounds like, are not keeping Ryan Lindgren, so very interesting note there. According to Elliot Friedman, he says he doesn't think we're going to hear Nick Ehlers a lot today. He says that there's a really good chance that one could wind up playing out. So, I mean, the top player on my free agent board might not be signing during the stream, so very interesting out there. I do think we could see some very interesting stuff. Elliot Friedman says that Colin Blackwell is staying in the Dallas Stars organization. The Saul Bomb 6 forward, 2-year extension, league minimum, $775,000. Not a bad deal there for the Dallas Stars. I do think that Blackwell's worked out quite well as a Bomb 6 forward, so I definitely do think that's a solid pickup here for Dallas as they are able to keep Blackwell. So Some very, very interesting updates here from the Dallas Stars. They keep Blackwell. The Flyers have signed Dvorak and Juleson. Let's see if there's some other updates here. Hold on. Let's see. Wow. Okay, so according to Elliot Freeman, he says that Christian Dvorak's AV is actually $5.4 million. So the deal gets worse. Wow, 5.4 for Dvorak. Once again, it's only a one-year deal, so it's not going to be an overly bad contract there from Philly. Should they be able to playoffs again next year, they could retain some money on him and sort of free up some cap space and trade him at the deadline. So very interesting. A little bit of a weird move there. So very interesting note there. But the Flyers have signed Christian Dvorak, who was one of the guys on the UFA list, in the Intent Hockey UFA list. So very interesting note there. They're on commercial break right now on Sportsnet, so lots of interesting things. So very interesting note there. We definitely have some very interesting things that are happening today. It sounds like the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be making some moves. According to one of the guys on Twitter, he says he sees the Canes and the Leafs as front runners for Ehlers, so that could be very interesting. It sounds like Ehlers won't be signed today, so we'll have to wait and see what happens there, but we could see some trades. We could see some offer sheets. Like I said, if nothing's really happening by like 11:30, 12, I might dip a little bit earlier than I was planning to. But we shall see. I'm at least going to be with you guys for at least the next hour. So very interesting note there. Like I said, I'm surprised the Dvorak got $5.4 million. I don't think Montreal's ever going to pay for that. So that's an overpayment and a half for the Philadelphia Flyers. So very interesting note there. Okay, let's see. So which teams do you think has improved the most at this point in time? We'll start with the Central Division as we wait for more signings. So if you look at the Central Division, look how they've panned out so far at this point. Let's look at how these teams have sort of gone through. So let's look at the Chicago Blackhawks first. This year so far, they've added Andrei Burakovsky. They've made some small moves. They bought out TJ Brody. Not a whole bunch of really interesting things. They got Frondell. They got Nestoralsi. They got, who's the other one? West in the draft in the first round. So like they've done some really good things, but are they going to be a playoff team next year? Based at this point in time, like we don't know what they're going to do in free agency and over the next little bit, but I do believe the Blackhawks will be a team who winds up not doing too much this offseason and probably won't be a playoff team next year, so we shall wait and see on that. Colorado, they made some interesting moves. They kept Brock Nelson, which was a huge extension for them. They kept around some of the other lower end guys. They wound up letting go of Charlie Coyle and Miles Wood, trading them to Columbus. So I do wonder what the Avalanche are thinking here. I could see the Avalanche potentially, not going to say it's a guarantee, but potentially be a team who ends up falling out of the playoffs next year. I know that's a little bit of a hard pill for some teams to swallow, but in a really tough Central Division, I could see the Avalanche do something like that. So we should wait and see on that. The Minnesota Wild, the Dallas Stars, like there's a lot of interesting teams. So like I could see Minnesota make the playoffs next year, Dallas make the playoffs next year, Winnipeg make the playoffs next year, and Utah make the playoffs next year. I think Colorado has a chance to make it next year, as well as St. Louis. I don't think Chicago makes the playoffs next year. I don't think Nashville will wind up making the playoffs next year either. So don't think any of those teams wind up making a playoff push, but they could see up to 6 teams make the playoffs next year in the Central. So we shall see exactly how all that pans out. So let's see what some other things are happening. Yep, Flyers signed $5.4 million AAV to Christian Dvorak. Dallas signs Blackwell, so we should see what else happens. Taves is now officially Winnipeg Jets, so very interesting note there. The Dallas Stars apparently just hired Glenn Glutzson as their new head coach. So Glutzson is going to be a very interesting head coach there for Dallas. He replaces Peter DeBoer, so a very interesting pickup here for the Stars. They do get Glenn Glutzson as their new as they do get Glenn Glutzson, so very interesting note there. We shall wait and see what other signings are going to be happening later on. So we shall see on that. Just waiting for some of these other interesting signings. Just give me a second here, guys. The reason why I have the Jets and the Canucks banners up is because the 2 best UFAs are on those 2 teams. The Ehlers in Winnipeg, Vancouver with Boeser, so very interesting note there. We shall see if either one of these 2 guys wind up getting signed later today, so we shall wait and see on that. Once again, the Stars now have a new head coach, so we shall see what else happens. Noah Juulsen's in Philadelphia, as well as Christian Dvorak. So a couple of very interesting Philadelphia Flyers are been signed by Philly, as Dvorak goes from Montreal to the Flyers organization, and Juulsen from the Flyers to the Canucks organization. So very interesting note there. So I'd love to hear your guys' opinion on some of these big deals that we've seen happen earlier over the past couple of weeks. So love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the chat. Who won the J.J. Peterka trade? Was it the Utah Mammoths acquiring J.J. Peterka, or was it the Buffalo Sabres acquiring Josh Stone, as well as Michael Kesselring? Who won that deal? Was it the Utah Mammoths, or was it the Buffalo Sabres? I think that Utah won that deal, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Who do you think won the Mason Marchment deal? Was it the Stars getting a 3rd and 4th round pick from the Kraken, or was it the Kraken by getting Marchment, who's a solid middle 6 forward? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on who you think won that deal. Who do you think won the Andrei Burakovsky deal? Was it the Kraken getting Veleno, who's now been bought out, or was it the Hawks getting Burakovsky? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Who do you think won the Dobson deal? Was it the Habs getting Dobson on a long-term extension, or was it the Islanders getting Eklund, Aitchison, and Heineman from the Montreal Canadiens? Who won that deal? Who won the Colorado Avalanche Columbus Blue Jackets deal? Was it the Jackets getting Cuylle and Wood, or was the Avalanche getting Brindley, a 2nd round pick and a 3rd round pick? I'll let you guys thoughts on who you think won that deal. I'll let you guys thoughts on all the deals that we've had so far down in the chat below. Who do you think won all the trades that we've seen? What about today's trades? Who wins? Arvidsson to Boston, or the 5th round pick to Edmonton? Who wins? Malieu to St. Louis, or Bolduc to Montreal? Who wins? Lafferty to Chicago, or a 6th round pick to Buffalo? So we shall see and wait on that. Let's see if there's been any updates. Glenn Goldson's now a new head coach in the Dallas Stars organization. So very interesting pickup here for the Stars. Oilers don't have very much space to work with. They have about $4 million in cap space. So we shall see how the Oilers play out today. According to some very interesting stuff there, let's see. Apparently Parker Kelly's been given a 4-year extension by the Colorado Avalanche. So very interesting note there. That's going to be a really solid pickup there for the Avalanche to sign Parker Kelly. Let's see if we can see some other ones. Hold on a minute here, guys. Hold on. Let's see. Christian Dvorak, we said, has already signed. So once again, I don't think that's a good contract there for the Philadelphia Flyers to sign Christian Dvorak to a 1-year deal with AV of $5.4 million. But obviously they feel like he can help in the short term, which is why he only got a 1-year deal. So very interesting note there. So according to Pierre LeBrun, there was a possibility of Jordan Kyrou getting dealt before his no movement clause kicked in. But now that his no movement clause kicked in, it would be a lot harder to trade Jordan Kyrou. So very interesting note there. The Rangers do have about $9 million, I think, in cap space or something like that. According to a couple of recent reports, the Canucks and Boeser might be trying to talk contract extension, try and keep Boeser, so we shall see on that. Let's see if there's any updates. Okay, according to recent reports, Parker Kelly got a 4-year extension in the Avalanche organization with an AAV of $1.7 million. So it's a solid pickup there for the Avalanche. Parker Kelly, solid person there. I think this is an extension because I don't think he was an RFA. I think he had 1 year left on his deal. So Kelly gets an extension, and he's going to remain in the Colorado Avalanche organization for quite a bit of time. So solid stuff there. We shall wait and see what other sort of moves happen today. Once again, there was a possibility of a Kyrou deal that happened earlier with the Montreal Canadiens and St. Louis Blues, but that deal fell through, and that was only a Bolduc for Malieu swap. So very interesting note there. We're still waiting on some of the bigger UFAs to happen. They're talking to the Edmonton Oilers people on Sportsnet right now. So once again, we shall wait and see exactly what other things could happen. Once again, I do think we could see some major movement here today, although I don't think there'll be too much of it. So let's hold on, go over here and see if there's been any updates when it comes to some signings, because I do think there are going to be a lot of signings here today, even though there's not going to be as much as usual because of the lackluster amount of top-end UFAs. We could still see some very interesting movement. I do wonder if the lackluster amount of UFAs will lead to some players being like RFAs being signed, so we shall wait and see on that, but I definitely do think there's going to be some very interesting updates here when it comes to potential movement. So we could see some very interesting things here. Hold on a minute while I try and get some updates here. So just give me a minute here as we try and figure out exactly what's happening today. Once again, lots of very intriguing stuff. I do think that teams who have gone better, Vegas has gone better. I do think Florida's stayed better. So those are going to be two of the better teams that all of these other teams are going to have to stretch out against. If you look at teams who I think are going to do bad next year and be in the McKenna sweepstakes, I think Pittsburgh's one of them. I think Pittsburgh's definitely going to be in the McKenna sweepstakes. I think the Islanders are going to be in the McKenna sweepstakes. I think Boston's going to be in the McKenna sweepstakes. I think those three teams, very safe to say, are probably all going to be in the McKenna sweepstakes. Maybe Philadelphia has a possibility to be in the McKenna sweepstakes. No guarantees by any means that they do, but I definitely could see McKenna wind up going to one of those four Eastern teams. Like San Jose, Chicago, they're going to take steps. I'm not sure if they're going to take steps out of the basement. Nashville, I could see potentially being in the McKenna sweepstakes. So very interesting note there. We will have to wait and see what exactly happens. So let's see. At this point in time, there's still no updates when it comes to potential options here. Apparently, according to some recent things, per Darren Dreger, the LA Kings made a large offer for Rasmus Andersson on draft night, and he did not want to play in Los Angeles. So very interesting note there. The Kings are a team to watch out for because if they don't get Ehlers or if they don't get Boeser, I could see him make some sort of a smart move. Like they got prospects, they got picks, they got a little bit of cap space to work with. So I definitely could see the LA Kings be a team who ends up making some big swings today. So we should wait and see on that. We are already 24 minutes in to the We're 24 minutes into free agency. We're almost an hour into the live stream, and we still don't have very much to talk about here. We have Christian Dvorak. There is Noah Juleson. Like, there's a couple of interesting pieces here. Yeah, so Kelly, 4 years, $1.7 million extension. Dvorak, 1 year, $5.4 million extension. Blackwell, 2 years at $775,000. Those are only 5 signings since free agency's open. So in 24 minutes, we've only done 5 signings. So hopefully we'll get some more updates over the next little while, but definitely seems like it's going to be a slower day when it comes to free agency. So we shall wait and see on that. I'm hoping for an offer sheet while I'm on the stream. I might have to do something like record a video later today or tomorrow talking about it if it doesn't happen during the stream. So we shall wait and see exactly what happens here. But very interesting note there. I do wonder what else happens. So let's see. Hold on a minute here, guys. I just gotta quickly get something. Hold on a minute here, guys. Just have to blow my nose there for a second, so just give me a second here. Okay, so we are back. We've got lots of more things to talk about. So I do wonder what we could see from Brock Boeser. Like, what are some of the landing spots? So Nikolai Ehlers, Carolina seems to be linked to him. The Anaheim Ducks could be a very interesting landing spot. We've heard about Utah potentially being a big player. I do wonder about that. Brock Boeser, same 3 teams. I do wonder about Los Angeles for either of those 2 guys. I do wonder about Edmonton. There's been some talk recently about Edmonton and Boeser. I don't think that's the right move, but it's a possibility. So we shall wait and see on that. According to Elliot Friedman, he also says a landing spot for Cody Ceci is Los Angeles. So we shall see if that winds up happening. I do wonder what else we could be seeing here, but there's like really no updates at this point in time. So we got some things to cover. So who do you guys think won the draft on draft day 1? Like, I definitely think that the New York Islanders were a pretty good team, getting Eklund, Aitchison, and Schaefer. The Hawks getting Frondell, Nestoralsi, and West were a pretty good team. Sharks getting Misa and Ravensburgen. That was a pretty good pickup there. Jackets, they got Jackson Smith, as well as one of their future goaltenders, Andreanov. Nashville got Reed, they got Lee, and they got Martin. So lots of very interesting stuff there from Nashville. So some of these teams definitely think they're a lot better than some of these other teams. So we shall see in time how the draft winds up going. Is there any team players you think from the first round of this year's draft who have a solid shot making the team next year? Like, is it Schaefer, Misa, Frondell? You usually see at least 1 to 2 guys in the lower, like between 10 and 20, wind up getting a small stint at the NHL level at least. So we'll have to wait and see on that. The Carolina Hurricanes have signed Amir Miftakov to a 1-year league minimum deal, a low-end deal there for the Carolina Hurricanes. So very interesting note there. But the Hurricanes have indeed gone young, I think, overseas goaltender on a 1-year league minimum deal. So we shall see what happens there. Once again, if you guys are watching, leave a chat down in the chat below. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all that happened here today. They're still just talking. According to Rick Dahl, he says he's hearing Boeser in Vancouver will get done. So the Canucks seem to be extending Boeser. And the Sharks just posted a picture of Will Eklund. So there could be a Eklund extension in the works here for San Jose. So let's see what happens here. But it sounds like Eklund might be staying in San Jose. Yes, he is. The San Jose Sharks will sign William Eklund to a 3-year extension with an AAV of $5.6 million. So RFA forward William Eklund is going to be with the San Jose Sharks for the foreseeable future. Really solid pickup here for the San Jose Sharks. Eklund worked quite well last year in a middle 6 role, top 6 role. Long term, he seems like he's going to be a very fantastic top 6 forward with guys like Celebrini, Smith, and now Misa. So very interesting signing there from the San Jose Sharks as they are able to get William Eklund on a new deal. So very interesting note there. Great pickup here for the Sharks as they are able to get him, and only at $5.6 million, which isn't a bad contract there. So very interesting note there. More and more players are re-signing with their teams. I don't know what we're going to be talking about over the next little while. It sounds like Boeser is long-term in Vancouver. So after all of that rumblings and things like that, the Canucks seem like they're going to keep Brock Boeser. So that's going to be a very interesting pickup here for the Canucks. Wow. Okay. Very interesting out there, but it does sound like Brock Boeser is extending in the Canucks organization, and it sounds like it will get done in the very near future, long term. So that would take number 5 and number 2 off the UFA list and sign them with their existing clubs. That's interesting. So that would mean that there's only 8 players in the top 10 of my free agent board, and the 2 that are gone were resigning. Like, why are there so many players resigning? This is such a boring free agent list. My goodness. Let's see if there are any updates on the Canucks and Boeser, because it seems that that's going to happen. Wow. According to Ehlers, he's hearing the same thing. Boeser to Vancouver. Wow. It seems that just all the UFAs are just re-upping with their current clubs. Like, it's just so bad. Okay, well, hopefully we get some offer sheets and some trades to offset the low, lackluster amount of UFAs that are going to be switching teams. Nikolai Ehlers could not get done today. Boeser sounds like he's going to Vancouver. Granlund, sounds like there could be some interest in him. Gavrikov most likely going to New York Rangers. Allen just extended. Drouin, Mangiapane, Suter, Holmberg, Perbix, all lower-end guys. Like, why are there so many players getting signed to extensions? My goodness. They're talking about the Joel Hofer extension right now in St. Louis. So very interesting note there. Like, there's really not that much to talk about at this point. So we're going to be with you at least for the next hour. If things start to slow down like they have been over the past half an hour, then I'll probably will just end the live stream around 11:30ish. I might stay a little bit longer to see if we see anything happen, but it seems like very interesting out there. I don't know exactly what the Oilers are going to do now, because there's a lot of talk about the Oilers getting Boeser. So if Boeser's going back to Vancouver, I do wonder if we could see some very interesting movement there from the Edmonton Oilers after they moved off of Vic Arvidsson. So very interesting note there. Let's see. Yeah, it seems like the Canucks are going to be keeping Brock Boeser. Marner's going to be number 93 in the Golden Knights organization. According to Dan Murphy, he's saying 7.25 for 7 years for Boeser in Vancouver. That's interesting. That's a solid move there, given the fact there was some talk it was going to get $8 to $9 million on a long-term extension. It seems that both teams caved. The Boeser caves on the AAV, and the Canucks cave on AAV, because I know that and the Canucks cave on term because they really want to sign to like a $5 to $6 million year deal instead of a 7-year deal. So very interesting note there, but it does sound like Boeser's going to be staying for a long time in the Canucks organization. So that's going to be a very solid addition here for the Vancouver Canucks. $7.25 times 7. What a pickup here for the Vancouver Canucks. I cannot believe
The Canucks are able to keep him. And once again, Eklund extension, great for the San Jose Sharks. So let your guys' thoughts down in the comment section below. What's your opinion on the Boeser extension, the Allen extension, some of the other extensions we've seen earlier today, Ferrari, yesterday's extensions, Marchand, Ekblad, Marner going to Vegas, some of those other very big extensions. Let's hear your guys' thoughts on all of it down in the comment section below. Let's hear all of your guys' opinions. We saw some very major, interesting stuff here today, including 3 trades, including Robertson going to Boston, including Mailloux being swapped for Bolduc, and including Lafferty being dealt to Chicago. So very interesting note there. Very, very interesting moves that have happened from earlier today. On top of that, Brock Boeser is in the process of signing a 7-year extension with an AAV of $7.25 million in the Canucks organization. So very interesting note there. So it sounds like Boeser is going to be staying with the Canucks. So very interesting note there. Yep, LeBron's made it official. 7 years, $7.25 million AAV for Boeser as the number 2 player on my trade list stays in Vancouver. So very, very interesting note there. Let your guys' thoughts down in the comments down in the chat on the signing. What was your opinion on Boeser signing 7 years and remaining with the Canucks? So very interesting note there. I wonder, like, at this point, everyone is going to be clamoring to try and sign Nikolai Ehlers. So I do wonder where Ehlers could go. And there's still a whole bunch of teams who need to make some big improvements. Columbus, Los Angeles, Anaheim. So I do really wonder what else we could be seeing here today. I do wonder if there's maybe some offer sheets, some trades. I do wonder about anything like that. We'll look at the RFA list and see what some of the bigger RFAs that could wind up being moved are right now. So I'll tell you guys that in a minute here. Let's see if there's been some updates. Let's see. Nope, no updates at this point. So it sounds like Brock Boeser is staying in the Canucks organization. Boeser's a solid top 6 forward. He is a former 40 goal scorer just 2 years ago. Had a sour season this past year, but works really well in the top line or top 6 for the Vancouver Canucks. And I do think with the Canucks maybe going through a little bit of a change, I could see Boeser be a solid pickup here for the Canucks, staying with Pettersson, staying with Hughes, and keeping that sort of core together. So very interesting note there, but the Canucks have signed Brock Boeser. 7 years, $7.25 million AAV deal. Very interesting note there. Hold on a minute here while I try and go after some of the RFAs. Hold on a minute here. Just give me a second. Hold on as I try and give you the Sportsnet stream is going into the Sportsnet stream is going into commercial breaks, so nothing you're missing at this point in time. We still have lots of very, very interesting things that are happening. Very, very interesting trades, signings, potential offer sheets that could be happening here today. So we shall see what happens here. Like the Canucks getting Boeser, keeping him, maybe that makes them one of the favorites to do some things in the Pacific Division this year. It's a possibility. Not going to say it's a guarantee by any means, but here. So here's some of the RFAs. There are a couple of interesting RFAs here. Here's listed by points. So Gabriel Velarde's an RFA. I don't think he'll probably get offer sheeted because the Jets could easily match. Marco Rossi, Minnesota is a possibility. I could see him get offer sheeted. I wouldn't say it's a guarantee, but I definitely think it's a possibility. McLeod Buffalo's not getting offer sheeted. Highly doubt McTavish is in Anaheim. Highly doubt Voronkov is in Columbus or Holmstrom in NYI. There's been some talk about Will Cuylle in NYR. It's a possibility he could get offer sheeted. Kako in Seattle, he's not getting offer sheeted. Hughes in New Jersey, highly doubt he's getting offer sheeted. Lafreniere in LA, highly doubt he's getting offer sheeted. Could see someone offer sheet Byram, that's a possibility. Morgan Frost will be a very interesting one. I could potentially see someone trying to offer sheet him. Saiplikov, you got Evangelista. I don't think those guys are going to get offer sheeted. Mackie Samoskevich is a very interesting one. He's an RFA, floors over the cap right now, and he makes some cap space. I do wonder if maybe there would be a team or two out there who will try and offer Samoskevich for just a 3rd round pick. I do wonder if that's a possibility of an offer sheet. Connor Zare in Calgary, maybe a potential offer sheet candidate there. Jack McBain in Utah is also an offer sheet candidate. Keandre Miller in New York, maybe a possibility of an offer sheet candidate. Riker Evans, I highly doubt. Robertson in Toronto, if they really weren't willing to match like a 1 to 2 year deal, like $2 million, and the third round pick, I could see that be an option. Cody Glass in New Jersey is an option. Sandberg in Winnipeg. Heineman in New York. York in Philadelphia would be a very interesting one as a potential offer sheet candidate. I could definitely see a couple of teams try and target York as an offer sheet candidate in Philadelphia. So we could see that happen. Then you got some more in guys, Byram, Timmins, Hellison. So not very many opportunities here for offer sheet. But you do have Cam York, you have Cody Glass, Nick Robertson, Keandre Miller, Jack McBain, Connor Zary, definitely Mackie Samoskevich, Morgan Frost, Byram, Will Cuylle, and Michael Rossi, all potential offer sheet candidates that could happen at some point today or in the future and then over the next couple days, couple of weeks. So we shall wait and see on that. But those are sort of the big time offer sheet potential options here for the NHL that we could see happen later today. Just once again, just recapping, Ehlers is the number 1 player on my UFA board. Could wind up getting dealt today, but it sounds like he'll wind up waiting to sign. According to reports, Brock Boeser signed an extension in Vancouver. Mikael Granlund's a very interesting name to keep an eye on today. Vladislav Gavrikov, he'll hit the UFA market, but it sounds like he's going to the Rangers. Jake Allen's going to New Jersey. And then Drouin, Mangiapane, Boeser, Pontus Holmberg, and Nick Perbix, all really solid additions there that could wind up being solid depth players there in those teams' organizations. So very interesting out there. We are still waiting for some more updates. I do wonder what some of these other teams could wind up doing today. Once again, I do have some things to do with family later on, so I'm not sure exactly how many videos I'll be able to post after this live stream, but I will be trying to get you guys as much content as possible, and anything that don't get today, I will try and definitely get to tomorrow, so we shall wait and see on that. Ottawa's been doing some pretty good business so far this year. I mean, they're talking to Ottawa stuff right now on Sportsnet. They wound up acquiring Jordan Spence. They wound up doing a couple of other very interesting things. They just recently signed Claude Giroux, so I do wonder if there's a possibility they could do some other things here today. I'm just trying to look and see if there's any sort of updates when it comes to potential trades or things. We did see 3 trades earlier today. Let your guys' thoughts down in the chat below. If you want your opinion, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Victor Arvidsson's been dealt to Boston in exchange for a 5th round pick. Sam Lafferty's been dealt to Chicago for a 6th round pick. And there's been a very interesting swap between the Montreal Canadiens and St. Louis Blues, as Mailloux has been dealt to the St. Louis Blues for Zachary Bolduc. So very interesting note there. As we could see some very interesting trades happen later today. I do wonder what else we could see. Canucks, Jets, those 2 banners are up there because Boeser and Ehlers were top 2 players in free agency. Now it sounds like Boeser is heading back to Vancouver. So we shall see what other teams do here. Like, I do wonder if there's a whole bunch of teams out there who turn to the trade market. Rust, Rossi, Robertson, maybe a guy like Martin H's. I do wonder if some teams turn to those guys. So we shall see very interesting stuff there. So we shall see exactly what else happens. Boeser has officially extended 7 by 7.25 in the Canucks organization. That's not, wow. According to Chris Johnston, Corey Perry, who is another player on the UFA list, I think, is signing with the LA Kings. Wow. Interesting. So imagine Corey Perry gets to a Thicks Cup final in 7 seasons and loses. Like, that would be insane. So it sounds like Perry is going from the Edmonton Oilers, where he's helped beat the LA Kings over the past couple of seasons, to the LA Kings, where he could potentially help beat the Edmonton Oilers. So very interesting there, but it sounds like the Oilers are losing Corey Perry to an arch rival in Los Angeles. So very interesting note there. I do wonder if we could see some very other interesting things, but it sounds like Corey Perry is heading to the Los Angeles Kings organization. So it's very interesting to note there. The salary is very good for Will Eklund, 3 years, $5.6 million. A really solid deal there for the San Jose Sharks to get RFA Eklund under contract. We're going to be with you for we're going to be with you here for at least the next 45-ish minutes. Once again, it's a very, very slow day today with the amount of low UFAs. So once again, after all the movement that happened yesterday, I definitely think there's a very likely chance that I'll just end the stream earlier. And if anything big happens, we'll see if anything else happens. But very interesting note there. According to Frank Saravalli, Yoel Armia is heading to Los Angeles, as well as Corey Perry. So Perry and Armia are going to help them add some bottom six help to this team. Some very interesting signings there from the Los Angeles team, who really wants to try and get better for this upcoming season. So very interesting note there. But it seems that the Kings are making some moves, as it sounds like they are signing Perry as well as Armia. I do wonder what those two deals look like. I wouldn't think they would be overly expensive. Like, I definitely think Perry's going to be in the 1 to 2 million range. I wouldn't think Armia will be above 2 million either, so I don't think they're going to be too expensive there for Los Angeles. The Kings don't have too much business when it comes to the RFA side, so they definitely have a lot of cap space to work with to try and make some moves. I do wonder if a lot of the movement in free agency happens after Ehlers signs, and on top of that, after maybe there's a couple of other trades. So we shall see on that. Dan Vladar has a new home. Vladar, who is probably the second or third best goaltender on the UFA market this year, signs a 2-year, $3.35 million extension in Philadelphia. So that's a very interesting note there. Philly's now signed Jolson, Dvorak, and Vladar. So very interesting note there. That's a solid pickup there for the Philadelphia Flyers. I definitely think Vladar could be a solid stabilizing guy like he was this year with Wolf for a guy like Sammy Ersson. I do wonder what this means for a guy like Ilya Fedotov or Ivan Fedotov, but I do think Vladar will be a very solid backup in Philadelphia to Ersson, maybe sort of be able to take some of the games off of Sam Ersson. I could definitely see a Vladar-Ersson tandem be a pretty solid tandem there for the Philadelphia Flyers. So very interesting note there, but the Flyers, it sounds like, are about to sign Dan Vladar to a new extension. So very interesting note there, as Vladar, one of the top end goalies on the market, seems to have been taken off. So very interesting note there. Perry is signing with the Los Angeles Kings. I do wonder what sort of a deal could wind up happening. Vladar, 2 years, $3.35 million in Philadelphia. So Philly is making some moves in free agency today. Very interesting note there. They added a middle six center in Dvorak. They've added a 6'7" defenseman in Jolson, and now a backup goaltender, tandem goaltender, and Vladar. So very interesting to note there. A solid pickup here for the Philadelphia Flyers that take Vladar. So very interesting to note there. Let's see if there's any other updates at this point in time. Not really, not at this point in time. Gage Goncalves has signed a 2-year deal with AV of $1.2 million in Tampa. So the Tampa solid player who was bottom six guy last year, I do think could wind up signing there. So it sounds like Gage Goncalves is signing an extension to remain in the Tampa Bay Lightning organization. So lots of very intriguing things that have been happening from our past day. Like we said, we saw a lot of movement yesterday. Marchand, Ekblad, Provorov, a lot of guys wound up staying with their current teams, which dwindled the UFA markets. And even today, we've seen a lot of UFAs sign with their current teams. Allen, Boeser, 2 of my top 5 guys are clear-cut signs of that. So very interesting note there. We are waiting to see what other sort of deals wind up happening. We've seen a couple of Canucks wind up getting extended, and Boeser, who was remaining in Vancouver, and then Garland and Demko have signed extensions. So very interesting note there. We have had a couple more updates. Brock Boeser, official contract is 7 years, $7.25 million. I do think that the Canucks caved on the length, and I do think that Boeser caved on the AAV. I think the Canucks really wanted 5 years, but they caved and give him 7, and I think Boeser really wanted 8 to 9 million, and he winds up getting 7.25. So that's a pretty solid deal there for the Canucks getting Brock Boeser. William Eklund, who was an RFA, signs a 3-year extension, AAV of $5.6 million. Not a bad contract there from the Sharks, as they are able to keep Eklund. And then on top of that, Lane Peterson signs a 1-year extension with AAV of $735,000 in Philadelphia. No doubt. So Peterson, who was a depth player in Edmonton last year, signed over in Philly and should be a solid AHLer or call-up option for the Flyers. So very interesting note there, but Peterson has signed a new extension with Philadelphia, so it seems like all the pending UFAs are signing in Philly. At this point, I would not be one bit surprised if Nikolai Ehlers did too, so we shall wait and see what happens there. But I could see this be really, really slow until Ehlers signs. So we shall wait and see on that. It does sound like Corey Perry is signing in Los Angeles. It does sound like Yoel Armia is signing in Los Angeles. So very interesting note there. We shall see exactly what else happens. Boeser, 7 years. Vladar, 2 years in Philadelphia. Very interesting note there. It sounds like the Minnesota Wild are expected to sign Nico Sturm. Sturm had a short stint there in Minnesota a couple of years back before he was out to Colorado. So it sounds like he's going to be joining the Minnesota Wild yet again. So that could be a really solid pickup there for the Minnesota Wild. Let's see what other things could wind up happening. So let's see. So very interesting note there. The salary breakdown for Jake Allen's new contract is 2.25 for the next 2 seasons, 1.8 for 27-28, 1.35 for 28-29, and 1.35 for 29-30. So very interesting to note there. Let's see. Armia and Perry are both going to Los Angeles. So very interesting note there. Some solid bottom 6 additions there for the LA Kings, who are going to be trying to finally make it out of round 1 next year, which is a must for the Los Angeles Kings, and maybe wind up making it past a guy like maybe making it past a team like Edmonton. So we shall wait and see on that. The Sportsnet people are still just talking with all of their Canadian reporters, so we shall wait and see if there's any other updates. Like we said earlier today, Caps have signed Ferravari 7 years, $6 million. I do think it's a little bit of a surprising move because I do think Ferravari is a very solid guy. I'm not sure if he's a $6 million player. So very interesting note there, but the Caps have signed him. The LA Kings have now signed Corey Perry. So very interesting note there. Let's see. It sounds like for Perry, salary plus bonuses total around $3.5 million. So I wonder what the actual salary would be according to Pierre LeBrun. I do wonder what we could be getting there for Perry. Let's see. 1 year deal for Pierre LeBrun says 1 year deal for Corey Perry. So very interesting note there. So it's only going to be 1 year. Perry's 40 years old. He's going back to California where he started his career, just now with the same team. So very interesting note there. It's a pretty solid pickup there for the Kings. Like Perry's a solid veteran. He knows how to get in other teams' heads. He could be a very solid player to add there for the Kings, especially if they're going to go up against the Edmonton Oilers again next year. So very solid pickup there for the LA Kings as they take Corey Perry. I wonder what that Yoel Armia contract is. We're going to get info on that as soon as we can. So very interesting note there. So very interesting note there. Let's see. They're currently in commercial breaks, so you're not missing anything. Let you guys thoughts in the chats on all the moves that we have seen so far and we could be seeing later on today. So very interesting note there. Let's see. 1 year, $3.5 million with signing bonuses. Here in New Jersey, according to Elliot Friedman, is making a strong pitch for Connor Brown. So a couple of lower and bottom 6 Oilers seem to be leaving via free agency. So very interesting note there. Very, very interesting. And we could see some more movement here. Like I think most of the deals are going to be happening via trade. So we shall wait and see on that. Like we said, we saw 3 trades earlier today, including Arvidsson, including who was it? Arvidsson. It was Lafferty, and it was Malieu and Bolduc. So very interesting note there. So I'd love to get your thoughts on those 3 deals down in the comments section below. And what sort of deals do you think could happen today? Is Rossi getting dealt? Is Byram getting dealt? Is Andersson getting dealt? Is Miller getting dealt? I'd love to hear your thoughts. We already saw Nick Hague get dealt. So I do wonder if we could see some more players wind up getting dealt today. No surprise. Gavrikov, according to Pierre LeBrun, is signed with the New York Rangers. $49 million complete AAV deal. 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49. So yeah, so 7x7 deal. Gavrikov signing with the New York Rangers. So that's going to probably push out Keandre Miller, you would think. So I would expect a Keandre Miller trade to happen at some point. So we shall see on that, but Gavrikov, no surprise, going to the New York Rangers, 7x7. So Gavrikov, who was 4th on my UFA list, is now off. So Gavrikov, 4th on my list, sends to New York. Allen, 5th on my list, re-ups in New Jersey. Boeser, 2nd on my list, re-ups in Vancouver. The only 2 players left in my top 5 of the UFA board are Ehlers and Granlund, and we shall see what happens there. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens with the
Top two guys left on my free agent board. You also have Jonathan Drouin, solid middle six guy, had a solid couple of seasons in Colorado, is injury prone, so might cause a lot of teams to think twice before signing him, but I definitely could see Drouin be a solid guy in the free agent market. You have Andrew Mangiapane, who's a really solid middle six guy. I do definitely think that a lot of teams could have some major interest in him if they miss out on a guy like Ehlers or don't want to pay the asking price of some of these bigger trade targets. So I definitely think Mangiapane is going to be a very interesting name. P.S. Suter, really solid season last year in Vancouver. Don't think the Canucks can probably afford him at this point in time. So it definitely seems like the Canucks will probably walk away from him. And Suter, I think, will probably get around the $4 to $5 million range on a new deal in a middle six. Holmberg wasn't qualified by Toronto last year. I definitely do think could be a solid middle six, bottom six guy in a team's organization. Probably wouldn't take too much to sign him. So very interesting note there. And you have Nick Perbix, who's probably the top right shot defenseman left on the board. Solid top four right shot defenseman, can play second pair minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if we got a longer term deal, maybe around the $3 to $4 million range. So we shall wait and see on that. But those are some of the top UFAs on the list as it sits right now. So we shall see on that. Let's see. So it's a 1 year bonus laden deal for Corey Perry. So Gavrikov 7x7. So Gavrikov winds up coming in at $1.5 million cheaper than Provorov, which is quite surprising. So very interesting note there. It's a solid pickup there for the Rangers. Is it the smartest move in the world? I don't think so. I definitely do think it's a solid move because I do have a weaker defensive core, but I'm definitely not sure if $7 million over 7 years for Gavrikov is the right move there for the New York Rangers. So very interesting note there. I do think we could see some more interesting moves here today, but it seems like it's going to take a while. So if nothing really major happens in the next 37-ish minutes, I'll probably just sign off at around 11:30. So I'm probably going to be with you guys for at least another little while. So we shall see exactly what happens. Let's see. So yeah, Gavrikov. Let's see. Connor Brown signing with the New Jersey Devils. 4 years, $3 million AAV. So that's not a bad deal for the New Jersey Devils. Get some bottom six help. Adding a guy like Connor Brown. 4 years, $3 million. He's on the younger side of things too, so I don't think it's an overly atrocious deal, but I just think $3 million for a bottom six speed type guy might not be the overly smartest move there for the Devils. But Brown, who was one of my guys on the trade bait list, the UFA list, has signed. So very interesting note there. That does sound like Brown is going to join the New Jersey Devils. Once again, sorry everyone for it being so slow today. Like, after all the signings yesterday, I knew this was going to happen. So maybe we'll see some things later today. Once again, I'll try and get everything posted as best as I can, but there can be no guarantees that I'll get everything done today, and there's a very likely chance most of the things that I'll be touching on will be happening tomorrow. So we'll have to wait and see on that, but definitely keep your eye on what's going to happen today. And there's a very likely chance that it might take 3, 4, 5 hours for the floodgates to open, the small floodgates that are here. So we shall wait and see on that. I do wonder if we could see some more moves. Like, there's been some talk about Pittsburgh making some moves. I do wonder about maybe like a Rustis Columbus. I think that's a possibility. The Jackets have young pieces, and the Penguins, I could see try to move Columbus there. So I think that's a possibility. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but definitely think it's a possibility. According to Boeser, the Sens did pursue Tanner Jeannot, but according to him, Jeannot has pursued other options, so it doesn't sound like the Senators will be getting Tanner Jeannot at this point in time. So that's a little bit of a surprise there for the Sens, but that does sound like they could be trying to go after maybe a guy like Brendan Tanev next, or a guy like Vic Olofsson, so we shall wait and see on that. Very interesting to note there. Connor Brown, 4x3 is now official, so decent middle six addition there for the New Jersey Devils to add some more offense to the team. I still think the best way for teams to improve at this point is going to be extensions. Is going to be trading. I don't think extensions like UFAs, there's going to be a couple of teams out there who are going to get some decent middle six guys, like third pair defensemen, but those are all depth guys that are on there right now. So I definitely do think there's a very likely possibility that the way these teams improve is probably via the trade markets. So we shall wait and see what happens there. And it might not all happen today. There might be trades that happen tomorrow. There might be moves that happen Thursday, Friday, and over the weekend.
So, like I said, as much as I was hoping there was going to be a lot of things to talk about and very exciting stuff, it doesn't seem that that's going to happen. So, let's just talk about some of the other things that happened over the past while. Let's look at some of the trades that happened throughout the past couple of weeks leading up into the draft. Like, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on some of these things because obviously there are no signings happening right now. So, I'll just go back to see some of the big signings, trades that happened earlier, and I'll let you guys thoughts. Like, who do you guys think won the Noah Dobson deal? Did the Montreal Canadiens win the Noah Dobson deal because of his 8 times $9.5 million deal, or did the New York Islanders win it because they got Eklund, Aitchison, and Heineman? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on who you think won that sort of a deal. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Who do you think won the Utah deal? Did Utah win it by getting Peterka, or did Buffalo win it by getting Doan as well as Kesselring? Love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Love to hear your guys' thoughts on all the moves we saw today. Who won the Robertson deal, who won the Lafferty deal, and who won the Malieu deal. Love your guys' thoughts in the chat below. Love your guys' thoughts. We are probably going to be with you here for another half an hour, around that amount of time. Then I'm going to call it a stream, because at this point in time, things are just not happening. Like, it's just so slow. So, very interesting note there. I do wonder what we could be seeing over the next little while. So, we're still going to have arbitration in late July, early August. There's still going to be some very interesting updates when it comes to some very interesting things. Let's see. According to some recent reports, Miller's being traded to the Carolina Hurricanes. Okay, that could be something very interesting. Stay with me, guys. I'll try and get some sort of an update here. But it does sound like Keandre Miller might be going to the Carolina Hurricanes. I don't know exactly what sort of a deal they're going to be working out here, but we know the Hurricanes could have used some more defensive additions with a guy like Dmitry Orlov gone. So it sounds like Keandre Miller is going to be going to Carolina. That's going to be a big blow there for Detroit. I know a lot of Red Wings fans really want to acquire him. So I do think this is going to be a solid pickup here for the Canes. Once again, just figuring out what sort of a deal is going to be happening here. Not sure what sort of the return is for Keandre Miller. So we shall see on that. Let's see. Hearing New York Rangers working on sending Keandre Miller to Carolina, according to Elliot Friedman. So, number 6 on my Andersson Talker trade bay list, and Keandre Miller is about to be dealt to the Carolina Hurricanes. So, very interesting note there. I did think there was a possibility we could see 1 or 2 guys get dealt today, and definitely seems that that's going to be happening. No official announcement as to what that's going to be, like what the sort of basis is for a deal, but definitely seems like Keandre Miller is heading to the Carolina Hurricanes. So, I mean, the Hurricanes, they already have Chatfield, they have Gostisbehere, they have Slavin, there was a couple of other guys they have on that team. So they have a pretty good decor. So adding Keandre Miller is going to be really good. They did lose Dmitry Orlov this offseason to free agency. So I think adding Keandre Miller is a solid piece here for the Carolina Hurricanes. I think he can be a solid left shot defenseman on like the second pair. You can have Slavin as your first pair left shot defenseman. You can have Miller as your second pair, and you can have Gostisbehere as your third pair. And I think that would be a really solid 1-2-3 down the left side for the Carolina Hurricanes. So very interesting note there. But the Hurricanes are acquiring Keandre Miller, 6 on my Incident Hockey trade bay list from the New York Rangers, and we will get the updates in a couple minutes to see exactly what the full details are for this deal. Once again, very, very small amount of signings. It sounds like Yoel Armia going to Los Angeles. That's going to be a 2-year deal. So very interesting note there. It sounds like Miller is heading to the Carolina Hurricanes organization, and it sounds like the Hurricanes are trying to work on an extension for him, so Miller's an RFA, so that makes a whole bunch of sense. According to Bob McKenzie, Toronto is closing in on forward Michael Pezzetta, so it sounds like Pezzetta will be going to the Toronto Maple Leafs organization and adding some more bottom six help for that team. So very interesting to note there. Let's see what other teams could wind up doing some things here today. Probably going to be with you here for about the next half an hour. I'm going to try and get you guys the details on the Keandre Miller trade, but I mean, like, there's no real big things happening, and I'm just rambling on at this point. So we shall see what happens with Keandre Miller, but I'm definitely probably going to end the stream in around half an hour-ish. So we shall wait and see what happens there. But lots of very interesting things. Like I said, if anything does happen after the live stream, I will take a video. I'll try and get something done today. Very good chance though some of these things will have to happen tomorrow. So once again, Let your guys' thoughts on all the things that are happening today and what you could see over the next couple of days. Tanner Jeannot is signing in Boston. Wow. Okay, Boston is signing Jeannot to a 5-year extension with AAV of $3.4 million. Okay, that's a little bit of a surprise there for Jeannot. Like maybe in an elevated role in Boston, because I think he could be a solid third line player in Boston. In an elevated role in Boston, I think he could wind up producing some similar numbers to what he did in Nashville all those years back. But that's a hefty AAV for Jeannot. I think we've gone like $2 to $3 million, 3.4 to Boston. Wow. Okay, I'm a little bit surprised by that. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what else happens here. But Boston is signing Tanner Jeannot. On top of that, Michael Pezzetta's AAV is going to be $788,000 for 2 seasons. So Pezzetta could be a solid 4th line guy, solid like 13th, 14th forward, be a solid depth type guy there for the Leafs. So that's a solid pickup there for the Panthers. I mean, for the Leafs, they do sign Pezzetta. So, very interesting note there. Let's see what else could happen. So, Pezzetta, Jeannot, both just signed. Pezzetta in Toronto, Jeannot in Boston. So, we shall see exactly what else happens. Let's see exactly what else. So it sounds like Jeannot, 5-year deal, $3.4 million AAV in the Bruins organization. So the Bruins get some added depth. So very interesting note there. It sounds like the LA Kings are signing Corey Perry to a 1-year extension with an AAV of $3.5 million, including signing bonuses. The Canucks have signed Brock Boeser to a 7-year, $7.25 million AAV deal to keep Boeser in the fold. Allen has signed a 5-year extension with an AAV of $1.8 million to remain with the New Jersey Devils. Gage Goncalves has signed a 2-year extension with AAV of $1.2 million to remain in Tampa. Yoel Armia signing a 2-year extension in Los Angeles. Christian Dvorak signed a 1-year, $5.4 million AAV deal in the Flyers organization. Vladar a 2-year extension with an AAV of $3.55 million in Philadelphia. And Noah Juulsen a 1-year extension with AAV of I think $800,000 in the Flyers organization. So very interesting to note there. But the Flyers, lots of very interesting signings. They've signed Dvorak, they have signed Vladar, they have signed Juulsen. The Canucks have extended Sasha Demko, they've extended Connor Garland to long-term extensions. They've also extended Brock Boeser on a new deal, so that was very interesting. We saw a couple of Lawrence signings. Colin Blackwell's back in Dallas, Lane Pearson's in Philadelphia, Noah Juulsen, like we just talked about, is in Philadelphia. So there's been some interesting signings. Keandre Miller's in the process of being dealt and signing an extension in Carolina. So there's been some very interesting deals that have been happening so far. But at this point, I do wonder what else could happen here over the next little while. I'm probably going to be with you here for the next 25-ish minutes, depending on how busy it starts to get. And then I'll probably call it a day. And once again, I'll try and get other blog videos posted in the not too distant future. So we shall try and see. Like I said, Jeannot, $3.4 million for 5 seasons. That's a gamble and a half for the Boston Bruins, a team who missed the playoffs by quite a bit last year. So very interesting note there. Pezzetta signed Toronto, solid player there. The Canes are getting Keandre Miller, so I do wonder what else could happen here. Let's see. According to some of the recent reports from Sens fans, they could be targeting Fox or Bukestad. Friedman apparently just mentioned that Fox could be heading back to Dallas as a 4th line center, so we shall wait and see on that. I do wonder if there's any other big things that could be happening today. Like I said, if there's some big offer sheets, big trades, I'll try and touch on it in the next video, like just a separate video. But once again, I can't guarantee that will happen because I do have some Canada Day things to do with my family. So like I said, I'll try and get some things that I forgot to post last night posted first, and then after all those things are posted, we'll see if I can get some more things posted. So we shall wait and see. I'm going to be with you here for the next 25-ish minutes talking about all the stuff that happened today, as there's going to be very, very interesting stuff here. But like I said, Jeannot, $3.4 million, like that's a gamble and a half there. Not too much. Very, very slow day for the stream today, so very interesting note there. Like free agency seems to be very, very slow at this point in time. So we shall see what else happens here today. Once again, Vegas made a big trade last night with Marner. Not too much has been happening today. So once again, we'll see if anything does wind up happening. We'll see what else happens. Like I said, I do hope that we could see some movement here today. There's been some. We still have to wait and see exactly what's up with the K'Andre Miller stuff. Number 6 on the end-to-end hockey trade bait list. I do think could wind up getting moved in the very near future. So we shall see exactly what happens. Miller's 6 on the end-to-end hockey trade bait list. So we shall see. The AAV for Yoel Armia is 2 years at $2.5 million on the docket. So very interesting note there. Armia signs 2 years, 2.5. A little bit more than I thought Armia would have gotten, but very interesting note there that Armia does wind up staying in the Los Angeles organization. So very interesting pick up here for Los Angeles. So we shall see exactly what happens here. Pizzetta signs a 2-year extension in Toronto. So we shall see what else happens. We are still trying to figure out exactly what's happening with K'Andre Miller. There are 23 minutes left before the stream, before I end it. So we shall see exactly what happens there. Let's see. Hold on a minute here. Let's see if there's been any updates. Bolduc goes to Montreal. We saw that a little while ago. Let's see here. Sens brought back Nick Cousins last night, so that's something we've already discussed. Armia, Jeannot, so Armia and Perry are both going to Los Angeles. Dvorak, Vladar, and Juleson are going to Philadelphia. Boeser staying in Vancouver. Brown's gone to New Jersey. And there's a couple of other very interesting things. K'Andre Miller is being traded to Carolina, so long as he can sign an extension. So lots of interesting things. I do wonder if we could see an offer sheet or two. That's a possibility, but I'm not sure how likely of a possibility that is. So very interesting note there. The fourth tier options are sort of thinning out at this point in time, so we shall see if anything ends up happening. Just a really weird deal for the Boston Bruins, getting 5 years at $3.4 million AAV, so very interesting to note there. Let's see what else we could see. I do wonder if the Seattle Kraken makes some moves today. Let's see if we can get some updates here. Hold on a minute, guys. Let's see. Hold on. Let's see if we can get some more updates from over the past little while. So we're going to have some very interesting note there. I'm going to be with you here for about the next 20 minutes. Definitely not an overly fantastic and busy day today. So very interesting to note there. Let's see if there's any more signing updates. Let's see. Gavrikov 7x7 with the... Gavrikov 7x7 with the Rangers. That was another big signing that happened earlier today. Let's see, Vladar, like we said. Yeah, no trades at this point. So teams have some pretty big amount of cap space, so I'm still looking at potentially doing some things today. The San Jose Sharks, the Anaheim Ducks, Carolina Hurricanes, Winnipeg Jets, Buffalo Sabres, the Blue Jackets, the Hawks, the Penguins, the Flames, the Kraken, Utah, and to some extent Detroit and Los Angeles. So we shall see exactly what happens there. I do wonder if we could see some massive movement here. I do think Detroit's going to be looking for a top 4 defenseman to try and improve that team. Excuse me. I do think that Minnesota is going to be trying to add some middle 6 help, especially if they move off of Marco Rossi. I think Seattle could try and have some sort of a solid top-end defenseman or maybe another middle 6 guy. I do think Utah could try and add another solid impact forward. I think Pittsburgh could try and make some sort of move to try and move off pieces. Same thing with Calgary. Same thing with Chicago, Columbus. I do think they're going to try and make a run at someone. I think Buffalo's going to try and make a run at someone. Winnipeg, Carolina, Anaheim, all going to try and make a run at someone. And I definitely think San Jose still got a whole bunch of cap space to play with. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there. But I definitely do think that there's going to be some very interesting movement here. Once again, once the live stream ends, there could be some more bigger things that happen, but it seems like this is going to be a very slow day compared to recent free agent days. Like I know 2 years ago we had a very interesting one. I know last year was a pretty interesting one, but this year just seems like it's not going to be an overly great free agency day. So very interesting note there. We shall see exactly what happens. Once again, I'm only going to be with you guys for another 20-ish minutes. So we shall see what happens in the next 20 minutes. I'll see if I can get you guys the Miller return. I'll see if we see any more sort of interesting updates. Let your guys' thoughts in the chat below. What was your opinion so far on all the moves that have happened? Are you surprised Boeser staying? Are you surprised Robertson's in Boston? Are you surprised Janot's in Boston? Are you surprised that Philadelphia signed 3 players in free agency? Are you surprised Armia and Perry are heading to Los Angeles? Are you surprised Allen stayed in New Jersey? Definitely your thoughts on all of that. So let's see what else we can see here. Let's see. Wonder what other things that the Carolina Hurricanes are going to do. Yep, 5 times 3.4. I do wonder if we could see an offer sheet of some sorts. That's a possibility that something could happen. Yep, Allen signed, Vladar signed, 2 of the better goaltending players in this year's goaltending UFA system. So very interesting to note there. Armia, Pizzetta, we got a lot of interesting players here that are still signing, but these are all depth guys. Like I have a very good feeling that until Ehlers signs, there's a very likely chance there's going to be a holdup on the market. So at this point, I think there's a very likely chance we don't see very much movement here. So we shall see what else happens. So like I said, Gavrikov 7x7, not too surprised there. So that does improve this team a little bit at this point in time. Winners at this point, I think, are Florida, given how much they were able to keep around. I think the Vancouver Canucks are a winner because they were able to keep Boeser around. They've also extended Connor Garland. I think Vegas is a winner because they were able to get Mitch Marner on an 8-year extension. So that's going to be a really good pickup there. I do think that the Leafs, not a winner because they did lose Marner, but they did at least get something back for him. They also got Michelli. I do think the Leafs are probably a winner today. Some of the bigger losers, like Columbus, if they don't do anything today or in the next couple of days, do think they would be considered a loser because I do think they need to make one big acquisition. Another loser would probably be Pittsburgh if they don't move anyone. Chicago maybe. Tampa hasn't done really much of anything. Boston just signed, 5 years, $3.4 million. That's just going to eat up cap space. I don't think it's a really good contract there for the Bruins. So we're going to have to wait and see what else happens here. Colin White signing in the San Jose Sharks organization, a 1-year extension. So very interesting to note there. Let's see what else happens here. Let's see. So it just seems like the Canucks are going to try and run it back next year, be a little bit healthier, try and be a little bit better. So we shall see exactly what happens there. Let's see. Okay, like there's not really anything here, so I don't know exactly what else to talk to you about, guys. So we'll just recap all the movements that have happened earlier today, and hopefully by that point we'll see some more movement. So let's go back here. Let's go to the signings. So let's look at all the signings that have happened on July 1st so far. Let's see. Hold on a minute, guys. Just give me one quick second while I get to all the signings that have happened from earlier today. Let's see. So Thomas Nosek signed a 1-year, $775,000 deal with Florida to remain in the Panthers organization as a solid bottom 6 forward. Connor Garland, who is a middle 6 forward in Vancouver, and Thatcher Demko, who's the team starter when healthy, have both signed extensions. Demko 6x6, Demko 3 times 8.5, and Garland 6x6. So a couple of really solid extensions. Demko a little bit more confusing because I do think with his injury troubles, it's a little bit pricey to give him $8.5 million. So very interesting note there. Then you saw Tony DeAngelo sign a 1-year, $1.75 million AAV deal with the Isles. We saw Hanley sign a 2-year extension with an AAV of $1.75 million in Calgary. So very interesting to note there. Then Neil Tarasov signed a 1-year, $1.05 million deal in Florida to remain as the team's backup after they acquired him. Logan Stankovic signed an 8-year extension with an AAV of $6 million to remain a top 6 forward in the Hurricanes organization. Jake Allen signed a 5-year extension with an AAV of $1.8 million to be a solid backup goaltender for the New Jersey Devils. Ryan Johnson signed a 3-year league minimum deal in Buffalo to remain with the Buffalo Sabres and try to keep that team having some added depth. Matt Luff signed a 1-year $775,000 deal in St. Louis to give the Blues some added depth on the forward group. Noah Jolson signed a 1-year $900,000 deal in Philadelphia to add some more depth to the Philadelphia Flyers' bottom 6. Colin Blackwell signed a 2-year $775,000 extension to remain in Dallas in their bottom 6. Christian Dvorak signs a 1-year $5.4 million AAV deal in Philadelphia, so a short-term center option there for the Philadelphia Flyers. Parker Kelly signs a 4-year extension with an AAV of $1.7 million to remain with the Avalanche for the next handful of seasons. The Carolina Hurricanes have signed overseas goaltender Amir Miftakov to a 1-year deal with an AAV of $775,000 to help with the Carolina Hurricanes goaltending situation. Will Eklund has signed a 3-year deal with an AAV of $5.6 million to remain as a solid RFA in the Sharks organization. Brock Boeser signed a 7-year extension with the AAV of $7.25 million to remain as a solid middle top 6 forward there in the Canucks organization. Lane Peterson signed a 1-year $775,000 deal with the Flyers organization. Gage Goncalves was a 2-year deal with a $1.2 million AAV deal in Tampa. Vladar signed 2 years at $3.35 in Philadelphia. Gavrikov 7 years at $7 million in New York. Brown 4 years at $3 million in New Jersey. Jeannot 5 years at $3.4 million in Boston. Pizzetta 2 years at $788,000 in Toronto. And Armia 2 years at $2.5 million in Los Angeles. And then there's also a Perry deal in there, 1 year at $3.45 million with bonuses. So very interesting out there, but a lot of very interesting signings from the past little while, including a couple of very interesting ones involving some players. Then we saw a few trades as the Boston Bruins acquired Vic Arvidsson from Edmonton for a 2027 fifth rounder. Bolduc is now a member of the Montreal Canadiens as he goes there from St. Louis for Malieu. And Lafferty is now a member of the Blackhawks again as he gets dealt there for a 6th round pick. So some interesting signings from our past little while. And once again, there's still a handful of guys, and I highly doubt that there'll be any major signings until Ehlers is off the board, as well as Granlund. So we shall wait and see on that. But thank you for all of you guys for tuning in. We're going to be with you here for about another 15 minutes. So very interesting to note there. As at this point, it's very, very slow. We got Keandre Miller trade coming in the very near future. Corey Perry's in Los Angeles. So it's a very, very interesting pickup here for LA. It sounds like Nico Sturm's heading back to Minnesota. So very interesting note there. Once again, all these deals are just getting finalized. I don't know exactly what the return is yet for the Canes and the New York Rangers, as the Canes did wind up acquiring Keandre Miller and are working on an extension. Can't exactly say at this point in time what the return is for the New York Rangers, but I gotta think it's something important. Like I said, I'll try and get a update video later today if I can. If I can't, I'll probably do a couple of update videos tomorrow. So once again, keep your eye on all the news that's going to be happening today. So very interesting to note there. We shall see exactly what else happens. Let's see, 2 years, $2.5 million for Armia. Not too surprised there. Dvorak did quite well under Rick Tocchet, so that's a reunion there too, because Tocchet was a coaching staff member in Arizona when Dvorak was in Arizona too. So very interesting to note there. We're still waiting for any sort of updates, which is very interesting to note there. Glenn Glotson has been named the head coach of the Dallas Stars, and they've also just named assistant coach Neil Graham assistant, so very interesting to note there. Bruins signed Jeannot was, I think, a questionable deal. The Rangers signed Gavrikov, a little bit of an overpayment, but not too much given what Provorov got from Columbus last night. Let's see what else. Let's see. Hold on a minute here. Give me a minute. Let's see. Hold on a minute. Let's see. We still got a lot of very interesting stuff here. I wonder what else we could see. We could also see big time extensions. So we could see very interesting extensions. Kirill Kaprizov is eligible for an extension now. Jack Eichel is, Kyle Connor, and there's a whole bunch of other players. Like we just saw Demko get extended. We saw Stankoven get extended. We saw Garland get extended. I wouldn't be surprised if those were the only ones that were extensions today. So we should be able to see a couple of other ones. We're going to be with you here for about another 10 more minutes. So very interesting to note there. I do think there's a very likely chance that we could see some later moves later on, but at this point it seems like it's very, very slow at this point. So very interesting to note there. Let's see, Dennis Gilbert signing with the Flyers too, so Philadelphia's spending spree continues. 1 year, $875,000, so very interesting to note there. Let's see what else happens. Marner is now a member of the Vegas Golden Knights. That happened last night. It does sound like Ehlers might be a guy who could be on the trade block for the Vancouver Canucks after the signing of Thatcher Demko. If they don't feel like Ehlers can be a backup, they just sign Lankin into an extension. We could see an Arthur Ehlers trade at some point, maybe today, maybe in the future, and over the next couple of weeks. But that's definitely a possibility. Let's see what else we could see. Hold on a minute here. Jeannot, 5 years. 3.4 million AAV in the Boston Bruins organization, so that's a very interesting one there. Jeannot is a solid bottom six guy, but 3.4 mil is a little bit pricey. Brown got 5 years, 4 years at $3 million AAV, so very interesting to note there. So I'm going to be with you guys here for about another 10 more minutes, and I'm probably going to call it a stream and just start to rattle off things as they come off later on in separate videos. So we shall wait and see on what happens here. Let's see. Hold on a minute. Yeah, there's really nothing to talk about at this point. They're just very, very slow. Yeah, the Pacific Division is going to be very, very interesting to watch next year because Vegas now has Marner, Los Angeles has Perry, they have Armia. There's still a possibility they could go after some other big fish today or in the near future. And Edmonton's just lost Perry and Brown and a couple of others, and Kane. So I really do wonder if the tide's turning the Pacific Division from Edmonton to maybe some of those other teams. And I do think Anaheim, if they do make one or two big moves, could be in that conversation as well. And with Vancouver keeping Brock Boeser, maybe the Canucks as well. So the Pacific Division is going to be really interesting. I think San Jose is going to take a step forward, but I don't think it's going to be too much of a step forward. I do think that the Anaheim Ducks are probably going to take a step forward. I think San Jose is going to take a step forward. Calgary, I think, will probably take a step back. I think Vancouver will probably be in the same position about as last year, maybe a little bit better. I definitely think Edmonton could probably take a step back. LA, Vegas probably take a step forward. So we shall wait and see what happens there. The Pacific Division is going to be a very interesting division to watch next year. Same with the Central. Like, I could see St. Louis, Dallas, Utah, Colorado, Minnesota, and Winnipeg all make the playoffs next year. So depending on how the next few weeks go, it's going to be very interesting to do my predictions for next year and see who ends up trying to make the playoffs. I definitely think that's going to be a very, very interesting thing to note there. So we shall wait and see on that. But I agree, Pacific Division is going to be a scary division as well as the Central. I definitely think the West next year is going to be a lot better than the East. So we shall see on that. According to Frank Saravalli, sources say the Habs have signed goalie Capo Kapanen, so some added goalie depth there. They have Dobes, they have Montembeault, but if they want to really add some goal insurance in case Dobes doesn't do overly well to start the season next year, Kapanen's a sort of guy I think could wind up being a solid add there for the Montreal Canadiens, so very interesting note there. But the Habs have signed Kapanen to be sort of like a second, third stringer there for that team, so very interesting there. It sounds like Nico Sturm is starting to come back to Minnesota Wild, so it seems like that's going to be happening in the near future. Still have to wait and see what the Keandre Miller return is for the New York Rangers, but Miller is getting dealt and signing an extension in Carolina, so we shall wait and see on that. I'll be with you here for about another 5-ish minutes, and then I'm probably going to call it a stream. So thanks for everyone who has tuned in. I appreciate it. Sorry we couldn't be able to break more news as it's been very, very slow today, but I will have future videos talking about all the stuff that happened last night that I were never able to get around to, plus all the stuff that could happen later today and into the future. And once again, anything I missed today, because I do have things to do with my family for Canada Day, I'll definitely be doing in the future tomorrow, Thursday, and I'll try and keep up to date with all the signings, offer sheets, and any other things that could wind up happening over the next couple of weeks. We're going to have arbitration cases in the very near future, so very interesting out there. But there's going to be a lot of movement over the next little while. The next 2 weeks will probably still be pretty busy, and then it'll start to slow down towards July, end of July, early August, and then in August, towards the end of August, early September, will start to pick up. So we shall wait and see on that. But still, there's a very likely chance we could see plenty more moves over the next couple of days, couple of weeks, over the next couple of a little while. We could also see some very interesting movement when it comes to free agency, potential offer sheets over the next little while. So we shall wait and see on that. But I definitely think there's a possibility we could see some very interesting and major signings over the next little while. So we shall see on that. Ryan Lindgren signing in Seattle. That's an interesting one. 4 times $4.5 million. So very interesting to note there. Lindgren's a solid player. Is he worth $4.5 million? That's the sort of contract he was on this past season. So, like, is that the best of contracts? I'm not exactly sure. But I definitely do think Seattle could definitely use another top 4 defenseman. They have Oleksiak, they have Larson. I do wonder if this maybe means Oleksiak's going to get moved, because they do have 3 solid right shot defensemen, and they do have a guy like Riker Evans who can play on the right side too. So I do wonder what this means for Seattle going forward, but they have signed Lindgren to a 4-year deal. $4.5 million AAV, and I think it could be a solid second pair right shot defenseman behind Adam Larsson on the Kraken team. So very interesting to know there. Lindgren has signed, so a really solid pickup here for the Seattle Kraken, getting Lindgren. No other updates here at this point in time. Let's see if there's anything else here. Nope, nothing really update here at this point. So very interesting out there. But the Seattle Kraken have signed Ryan Lindgren, as the former Ranger, former Avalanche player, has signed over with Seattle to bolster their blue line. So very interesting to note there. Let's see if there's any other updates at this point in time. Let's see. So interesting to note there. Like, it's still very interesting to note for Seattle. Like, they acquire so many middle 6 forwards this year via trade, and then they go out and acquire Ryan Lindgren. Like, they are in the state of mediocrity. Like, I could see them do better than they did this past year, but I wouldn't see them being very much better than like a fringe, maybe 500 team, maybe a tiny bit above a 500 team. So we shall wait and see on that. But Lindgren has signed with Seattle, 4 years, $4.5 million. And that's going to be a solid pickup there for the Kraken. We're about 3 minutes away from ending this live stream, so we're just going to be a couple minutes away. And then we're going to be, like I said, doing videos periodically as much as I can throughout today as well as tomorrow and in the future, talking about all that happened today and going into the future as well as what happened yesterday. So we shall wait and see on that. So very interesting to note there. I do think that we could see some trades once there are a couple of other teams who wind up seeing things happen. Like, if there's a team out there who winds up needing a center and one of the centers leaves, I could see a trade happen. But I really think until Ehlers and Granlund sign, there's not going to be any sort of forward movement on the free agent market, at least for the top end guys. Like, we've seen Jeannot sign, we've seen Brown sign, Armia sign, Perry sign. Like, we've seen all those guys sign. But some of the bigger type free agents like a Mangiapane, like a Drouin, like a Suter, I'm not sure if they'll sign until after a guy like Ehlers and Granlund sign. So we might be waiting here a while for the floodgates to really open up. So very interested to note there. I'm probably going to end the stream in about a couple of minutes here, and then we'll once again try and do some update videos over the next little while. So we shall wait and see on that. So very interesting to note there. Let's see if there's anything else. Hold on a minute here, guys. Let's see, hold on. Yeah, there's really nothing. I do wonder if we could see a Rasmus Andersson trade with all of the right shot defensemen that have been gone. I do wonder if there's a team or two out there who would pay a pretty penny for the Andersson, even if the Flames really didn't want to move him with an extension, to get the best return they could. Maybe the Knights are able to get him on an extension. I'm not exactly sure. So we should wait and see on that, but I definitely do think there's a possibility we could see the Vegas Golden Knights maybe try and acquire Rasmus Andersson or try and see some other things too. So we shall wait and see on that. Very likely that we could see some more movement happen over the next little while, but it's so slow that I'm not going to stay around here and just ramble for 2-3 minutes until the next signing happens. So once again, I'll try and post updates over the next little while talking about any sort of updates that happen. I think there's a very likely chance we could see some movement, but it doesn't seem like it's happening right now. So that's all I'm going to talk about in this video. I thank you for all of your support. Thank you for tuning into my live stream. I really do appreciate it. I thank you for tuning in. If you guys did, if you haven't, check it out. I really do appreciate it. Leave a comment down in the comment section below. What's your opinion so far, at least as of the first hour and a half of free agency, on what has happened at this point in time? Who do you think goes where? Ehlers, Granlund, Drouin, Mangiapane, Suter, Holmberg, Perbix, where do those guys all go? Do we see some more trades that happen later today? Could we see some offer sheets? I'll let you guys thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video if you haven't already. Don't forget to subscribe down below. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. It really does help with the channel. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis. I'll try and have an updated UFA board posted in the next day or two on that. So don't forget to stay tuned for that. that. I also do a couple of other very interesting things. Don't forget to stay tuned for today's videos later today, talking about all the stuff that happened last night. Also talking about the things that are going to be happening today, so don't forget to stay tuned for that. And on top of that, I'm also going to be trying to give you guys as much updates as I can, but don't expect too much stuff today because I have to do some things for Canada Day with my family, but do expect me to try and keep up to date as best as I can. And don't forget to check out my Twitter, as I do post on that regularly, so don't forget to stay tuned for that. Check it out. Thanks for all of your support. That's all I'm going to talk about in this video. Thank you. I'll see you all in my next videos. That's all I'm going to talk about today. See you guys soon.